Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, it's Alan Shimel, and happy Monday to you. I am still, as I recorded this, we record day before. So as of Friday, I am still in Las Vegas, nursing a AWS reInvent hangover, I guess, though I didn't drink anything. I think several of us have that same uh, disease, though, or symptoms. We'll talk about it maybe. But welcome to our Monday Techstrong Gang. Before we get shouted, I got to call out a big day for our bard, Mike Vizard, and his lovely wife, Charlene. It's their anniversary as we record this, so we're going to wish Mike and Char a very, very happy anniversary. See how red I can make his face on here. Happy anniversary to you, Mike. You're a lucky man. And as Mike said when he was out here in Vegas with me this week, who would have thought he bet the under when they got married, and he's lost his money, but he's gained a life partner. Moving on, though, we have Jack Poller with us, Camberly Bates, Andy Mann, Mitch Ashley. This is like a majority Colorado board here. Oh my. But welcome, gang members. Mike, I appreciate you coming on your anniversary. We've got some interesting stuff to talk about today. We're going to start off with yet more reasons to people who are worried or anxious about AI.
Yeah, it's interesting how rapidly this whole thing is shifting because early on it was all about, well, is AI going to take my job and replace me? And that's currently a concern. But a survey suggests that people are also now diving in a little bit, getting the understanding of AI, maybe less awed by it, but certainly more concerned about losing control over it. And the fact that, they're trying to figure out, well, A, what am I allowed to do? But B, they're starting to understand that some of this stuff can just kind of spiral without some sort of guardrails or controls in place. And they're starting to ask some interesting questions about all this. So, Alan, we've been talking about this issue for a while now, but it's interesting that it seems to be taking on a different nuance.
It has been taking on a different nuance, Mike, but here's an interesting thing. This is, who is it? Maslow's
hierarchy of needs.
Hierarchy, right? So first, people are worried about their own well-being, right? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose my livelihood? Am I going to lose my place in society as a result of this AI stuff, right? And I think we are still wrestling with that as a society, as humans. But then the next thing starts, right? And it's like, hey, wait a second, can we trust this thing? What is it trustworthy? Is it a security risk? Can I let it have, intimate details? It probably already knows intimate details about me, unfortunately. And what are we going to do? Who's regulating this? This thing's going to run amok. What happens if it decides to just get rid of us or something? So there are these trust and safety issues. And, I think even that falls into two categories. There's what I call the irrational, non-technical anxiety, and I've seen this with friends and relatives who are not in tech, who say, I'm not using that. I'm not using that. I don't trust it. I'm shutting it down. I'm not telling it anything about myself. I don't trust what it tells me. Everything's a fake. And then there's the tech people who are maybe a little more enlightened only because they're exposed to it more. It's not that they're necessarily smarter, but they're exposed to it. And these are the kinds of people, Mike, who are like signing the letter to AWS about, hey, we've got to put some guardrails in here. This thing, the security people are always on the megaphone blaring everything is no. But, this is, in my mind, a little bit more rational, a little bit more developed nuance than just saying, oh, I'm going to lose my job and we're going to eliminate poverty, money, and everything else, and live, on Vulcan somewhere or something. But um, th- this is real. This is real stuff. There is security issues. There are privacy issues. There are trust issues that AI is going to have to win over the minds and hearts of people.
Alan, I think it's even more fundamental. I think when we talk about AI is replacing me, you're replacing my value. What's my intrinsic value if AI can do everything I can do? Then how do I make a living? Then how do I feed my family, et cetera? And honestly, this is one of the things I don't like about our hype cycle is we get the tech giant industry pundits, CEOs talking about how we're going to replace all these jobs. And we'll do something like universal income. We can't even figure out how to give people a tax credit or feed our folks. Let's talk about a universal income. So people know that's BS. So that overhyping just makes the anxiety even higher. I think we're in who is the Mel Brooks anxiety with that high anxiety
It was
movie?
high
I think we're in
anxiety.
the spiral right now.
Yeah, we spoke about it last week. But Mitch, I think, again, back to the hierarchy of needs, that is very personal to me. It threatens my very existence. Now we're seeing a secondary and a tertiary anxiety of, wait a second, I don't even trust this thing, right? I don't trust it. The security issues, in my mind, that's a little, not that replacing my job is irrational, but this is a little bit more nuanced. It's not, I'm not just worried about my own personal well-being. I'm worried, about how's this, what bad could happen to everyone.
Well, I'll echo Mitch a little bit that I think part of this is driven by the media in some extent. We have a media that lives off
Sure,
of,
blame the media,
right.
guys. Why can't we blame the analysts?
Well, you already
but
threw
hey,
security under the bus.
absolutely.
He's got to respond. So
I knew that was coming, right?
The old expression, if it bleeds, it leads, still applies to AI is let's talk about all of the bad things that can come about it. And then, as Mitch says, when we talk about the good things, we talk about the good things in ways that are essentially bad. It's how is this going to change our lives? We don't talk about it changing our lives for the better. We talk about it changing our lives for the worse, right? And I think you're right, Alan, that there is a divide between those who are technically literate enough to understand what the AI and LLM world really is all about and those who aren't. And in some extent, this is like where we were with the introduction of the machine age and the Industrial Revolution, right? It is a massive revolution in the way our society is working and will work in the future. What that happens, we don't know. And that, that unknown leads to a lot of anxiety.
But this is healthy. This is healthy. This is like what should be happening. Because as we've experimented with AI and we've seen, each of us have gone in there and said, well, that's baloney, the information I'm getting back, or that's inaccurate, and we were the early adopters of it, right? I don't think myself as an early adopter, but certainly I was. And as compared to my family members that I was with this last week at Thanksgiving. So that's important. I mean, there was an article this week in Wall Street Journal about Waymo. And they've taken some of the guardrails off of Waymo. So it's now a little bit more aggressive. And what they were noting is driving more like a taxi driver. And they had one that they were swerving in and out. Two Waymos were swerving in and out. And they also cited one where, the Waymo always comes in up to a four-way stop, and they acknowledge everybody else before they'll take the turn or take the stop sign. And she said that, no, that's not what happened this time. Now, the goodness of that, another person in the article was quoted as saying, I will now take Waymo instead of the taxi driver because it's more aggressive. Okay. So, I mean, that's a trust. So she wasn't taking Waymo because she wasn't trusting it to be whatever. And yet now I'm saying, okay, so, I haven't done a Waymo, but heck. So I think there's a good and bad in here, and that we should approach any kind of new technology with some skepticism. And the report that you guys cited, I think it was Edelman, that's the primary purpose of their study, is to look at trust and look at, trust, whether or not I'm looking at voting or the AI. AI is the obvious one, but a whole lot of other things that they're looking at. And oh, by the way, Mike, in that report, the media are the bottom of the barrel in terms of trust. So, sorry.
Even when we had newspapers, we were still at the bottom of the barrel. So we're used to being there.
I don't even think analysts were on the list.
Right.
But let me follow up to what you said, Cam. It's last week was Thanksgiving. Well, actually, now that you're watching this, the week before was Thanksgiving. And and Thanksgiving is always a time to take the temperature of your friends and family, whether it's politics, technology, or any other number of things. And Kimberly, I had a very similar thing to you, right? I found myself doing AI. I call them AI parlor tricks with people, showing them all the cool things. I showed them a soar I made of me as a Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. It was a big hit. Um, but it kind of goes over a fact. Are we headed to a society, to a humanity point of thing where AI defines haves and haves nots? If you are AI enabled and you embrace it, are you going to have a better life, live longer, work less, make more money, be happier? I'm just throwing things out at you. Versus someone who says, I don't trust it, I don't use it, and keep it away from me. And your life will be less rich and less, diverse, less everything.
I don't know. I think it's going to be, at least for the time being, very similar to what we currently do, right? We all go to work, come home, have dinner, and the conversation invariably turns to work, and there was a bad day at work, and you basically start explaining to your family that, you work with idiots and blah, 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 blah. Well, that's just going to change and say, I had a bad day at work and I work with idiots, except they're AI agents and they're idiots, but I had to go spend all my time fixing all this crap that they did. And it's just going to be the same conversation with a slightly different inanimate object as being this source of the
I
thing.
disagree. Let's take a couple of recent things. Let's take the cell phone and the internet. These all of us are of an age here, some of us younger than others perhaps, but we're all around the same generation. Think about your life before the internet. Think about your life before the cell phone, right? I was showing someone pictures of me last night that someone had sent me from 1983. And they were like, wow, look at these pictures. These are great. I said, keep in mind, these weren't pictures taken on a phone that were digitized. These were photos that someone actually recently took a snapshot of, or a phone grab of, right?
An Instamatic, that was technology at the time.
Absolutely, with the
Ooh,
flash cube.
whoa.
Remember our flash bulbs? Ooh, that would make me blind for a second. But think about our lives before there was. Hey, you go home and you turn on the TV, Mike. It's not Uncle Walter on there no more. Okay, it's not. It's there's 100 channels, 100 million channels, and nothing on. Right, as the Bruce Springsteen song says. And so technology has a profound impact on our day-to-day and how we do things. I think AI is going to have that kind of impact. Things that we just are going to start taking for granted. Like, hey, AI, go, a digital butler, if you will.
It's a new way of doing things and doing the science. It's a new way of doing science. It's a new way of creating content. It's a new way of customer service, type of customer service, of automating those things. And I think whoever was making the comment, will we be happier, more content, whatever? And I would venture to say, not really. Technology has not necessarily made us happier or more content or working less. It's just a change in how we do things.
Look how it's brought us together, though, as one nation, right? And all of that good stuff, of course.
I think it's gonna be more of the same, and I'm gonna have a bunch of AI agents, and they're gonna squabble with each other, and I'm gonna yell at them and say, "Don't make me pull this car over."
Well, no, you're going to say, pull the car over because you're not driving.
Am I going to need to pull the keyboard over? Hold on
Right,
just a minute.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Hey, but you know what? Let me just tie a bow on this one. I hear you loud and clear, people who have anxiety around AI, whether it's at your inner core of like your imposter syndrome run wild because AI is going to expose you for not really being who you claim to be and doing the job that you're doing and being replaced, to fears around trust and safety and what could happen if this thing runs amok. We hear you. I don't think you're crazy. I think it's something we all have to come to terms with and figure out. But it's going to be a personal thing, right? It's not going to be a blanket thing. It's going to go individual by individual, coming to terms with how they're going to have AI exist in their world. Sound good? All right, let's take a break here on Techstrong Gang and come back. We'll talk about our next topic. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
You've earned it. The spotlight, the responsibility, the weight of teams, companies, and entire industries fall on your shoulders. Lives depend on your decisions, your home life included. At work, you're protected, physically and digitally. Nothing gets through your team without a fight. But in a globally connected world, everyone sees you, including those who mean to cause you and your organization harm. And now home, your sanctuary. Attackers see an opportunity. Your digital front door is wide open. And what compromises your home can breach your boardroom. Because the devil's greatest trick isn't targeting your workplace firewall. It's convincing you that your personal life isn't at risk. Black Cloak. Digital executive protection, defending the new attack surface, your personal life.
Hey folks, we're back and we're going to talk about AI, but we're going to geek out a little bit about it because, well, there's conversations that says that we need a new approach to the data center in terms of how we're going to build and support these applications and environments. And HP and AMD are calling for a more open rack scale AI infrastructure. And there are surveys out there that says that IT leaders, very few of them feel like their current infrastructure is up to the AI task. So, Kimberly, as you look at all this stuff, do we need to kind of re-architect the data center, rethink this whole thing from the ground up? And is AI going to just, be in the 2026 year, the year of infrastructure?
Well, I think it was Dell that coined the AI factory terminology almost a year and a half ago. And when they came out of their conference, and I didn't understand it initially, and then I dug into what they were talking about. And this was what they were saying is that this is so big that we are going to create the data center people, the people in the enterprise are going to create another factory to manufacture, and I would say manufacture these tokens. They're going to drive the AI initiatives within the systems. So you would have your regular enterprise environment that's doing the online transaction, and then you would create this AI factory that is also able to do the work of the inference engine. And I believe this is what this is exactly what HPE. This is not the first rack type scale offering that they brought out. They brought out the Green Lake, and that's primarily the difference of this one is based upon Open Compute project and the Open Rack one of the Open Rack specifications. And then the other big news on there is because you're partnering with AMD, and then they're also using their latest acquisition, Juniper, in this rack scale kind of ability. We've also saw that come out with AWS, and Mitch and Alan, you can probably talk about it, which is they announced their AI factory. It's already shipped. Dell has shipped theirs, but they'll probably do some revamp, and we'll see that as it goes through the year as they update and improve, and we find out more information about what is needed on the platform. And then, a month ago, I was sitting in a place called Oxide Compute, and they have rack scale devices. It's not specifically for AI, but I would expect for them to be delivering those kind of environments. So, yeah, this is where we're going. And especially now that inference is starting to increase the amount that's being delivered, and the enterprises are getting their hands wrapped around the data and to be able to deliver on these use cases.
I'm going to throw this out to the group because, but I'm struggling with this in my mind. So if I use a service, whether it's Amazon or whatever, I wind up paying for tokens, and tokens are for input and output. So every time I do something, there's a cost on the inside and out, and then the output. Is that going to drive more people to want to build stuff that runs in their own data centers so they don't have to have those kind of token-based costs, and it just be something that I kind of run locally because it's going to prove to be less expensive over time? I don't know. Jack, you want to throw a thought in on that?
It's less about tokens and more about the volume of data. So the real issue is to get the benefit of AI and LLMs in particular. You want to throw as much data at it as possible, particularly if you were a corporate environment type of place. You wanted to have access to all of your corporate data. Shipping that data into the cloud and putting it into an environment that AI can access it at the speed and scale it needs to becomes very expensive. And then you have a latency of access issue. So there is the feeling that right now organizations are going to, and also the security of that data, moving all that data around. So organizations are really going to want to keep all of that data in-house in their own environments, and therefore need an infrastructure built to be able to access that data. And this is the start of, and I think I mentioned it, I don't think Kimberly was here, but Andy, you and I might have been on a Techstrong Gang a couple weeks ago, where I talked about the fact that right now we don't have a well understood recipe for how does an organization, if a CIO says we're going to do AI and we need to do an AI training and AI inference, how does an organization put that together? If we said we need to do virtualization or we need to do containers, you go to a DevOps person and they understand that and they have a recipe and they can go build that relatively quickly. We don't have that right now, which is why organizations like HP and Dell and AWS and all these different things are coming up with their own factory, which is a recipe that says you put all these components together on the hardware side and all these components together on the software side. And with that, you then have the infrastructure you need to do it. Since there's no standardized infrastructure right now, everybody's coming up with their own flavor of it.
Jack, I think that's an excellent point, but I think there's something more fundamental missing here. This is more like the moonshot NASA mission, where we know that in order to do 100 gigawatt or whatever data centers and racks that support 10 gig versus 10 meg, we need to invent technology. We need to come up with Tang, or you think about some of the things that NASA came up with.
The flux capacitor.
We need a flux capacitor, right? We right? No, seriously, we need to come up with better ways of producing enough energy that won't destroy the planet. We need to come up with better ways of cooling down these racks so they don't, without using 2 million gallons of water. We need, it's one thing to say, you know what, I'm going to come up with a recipe and I'm going to go down to the supermarket and pick up these ingredients. It's another thing to say, I've got to go invent these ingredients. I've got to go make these ingredients so that we can have a recipe. And so I think right now we're in a bit of a Cambrian era of people experimenting, and we'll figure out what innovations, what technologies, what inventions are going to help us to build these factories. And then it's so that's the phase one. Phase two is, okay, now we have those things and I can write down my recipe versus Jack's recipe versus Andy's recipe and go with it, right? But we're still in, I'm from Long Island, right? If you ever read the story about the lunar module, the LEM, right? They told Grumman, go build this. You got a year and a half. They didn't know where to start. No one had ever built a lunar module that was going to land in microgravity, and they didn't know if the damn thing would take back off after it landed, like the capsule going back up. And they had to kind of make it up as they went. They had to invent. They literally invented things to do this. That's where we are right now. We're inventing this. We're not quite up to a recipe yet. We're still at the inventing it.
Well, and that's what I think one of the benefits or one of the highlights of this announcement with HPE is that it is based upon Open Compute Project. And one of the Open Compute Project, for those who are not aware of what this is about, and it's usually held in September if you want to attend the conference that they do, but it brings a lot of the hyperscalers together. I mean, who's involved with that is going to be Google, it's going to be Facebook, and a bunch of other folks that are dealing with this. So they're up front and center, maybe not exactly what the enterprise needs, but they're up front and center about what's going on in their area. And so that is how this is coming together. And I have a lot of confidence in what they're delivering in terms of spec coming out of there, because they're moving so fast. I mean, it's not a slow process for them to bring something out. And more likely that it's going to be a solid kind of concept and offering that a vendor can take then and build their own rack for the benefit of the enterprise.
I think
There's a whole nother-
open. Good. Rich.
There's a whole nother layer to this, Alan, which is, if AI is the nail gun to the traditional hammer of traditional code, we don't need a nail gun for everything, right? And so, for example, there's a whole field of neurosymbolic, fancy term, but basically a combination of generative AI, neuro kinds of processing, along with traditional symbolic languages. So you see companies announcing things like security guardrails, compliance, agents. Those aren't all AI-based technologies. A lot of that is procedural logic that's added on top of results from AI. It may have some AI components to it as well, but it isn't necessarily throwing more AI at the problem. And when we seek higher levels of accuracy, a lot of that is symbolic language processing against AI. The other part of it is, I met with a startup during reInvent that is creating technology that will take AI content or generated content or data that's used by AI and create more symbolic processing against that. So taking the results from AI and now saying future executions of this, we'll do a symbolic processing result or process against that. So we're not consuming tokens every time, which are extremely expensive, or we can collapse the amount of tokens that we need by optimizing the AI part of it. So it's not everything is going to consume massive amounts of tokens. Yeah, we're going to consume a lot more of them, but there's an economy of mixing these technologies together.
So Mitch, that's an evolutionary step, right? First you kind of invent a thing and then you put your efficiencies in.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're talking about. We've got more efficient.
I would disagree. Walking around AWS reInvent last week, everybody, and you could see it was becoming a major conversation, this whole notion of FinOps and applying it to AI, because people are already at that point where this stuff is too expensive to run in production environments. And, that comes back to, Andy, there's this word called observability. Are we going to apply that to AI and FinOps or what?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things you need to observe within the AI infrastructure, within the architecture itself, to make sure you're doing the right thing. And it's not just token use, right? That's a cost issue. FinOps is obviously very important, but it's also about quality. Am I using the right LLM? Are my people using the right LLM? Are they asking the right questions? Are they passing through PII through to a public LLM? Are they submitting my IP to Claude, and now Claude's learning how I'm coding, and now my competitors are learning how I'm coding as well? There's governance issues there. There's cost issues, absolutely. And, there's actually, ESG value here, right? I mean, Alan brought it up at the beginning of this block, talking about the resources that we're using. We are literally pillaging the landscape for this stuff, right? And it is normal. And Mitch, to your point, talking about the idea of these revolutions, this is something I wrote literally 20 years ago, is first comes the revolution, then comes the management. So management tooling is absolutely going to be part of this gold rush. Actually, let me back up. Management tooling is part of the general store that is servicing the gold rush. You've got hardware vendors like HPE and AMD, obviously Dell, as you said, Camberley, NVIDIA, you've got the cloud players, AWS, we saw that last week at reInvent, everywhere, AWS doing AI. XSP, the service providers like Equinix, IBM, but management tooling is absolutely going to be the thing. You're going to have to provision and deprovision dynamically. These resources use an incredible amount of money, cost, power, water, this sort of thing. And you know what? Mining was always a dirty business. We still see the impact on the landscape of failed mines. Certainly here in Colorado, we remember the Gold King mine leaking out into the mighty Colorado River, all this toxic waste. We do need new inventions, Alan. We need new energy inventions. We need new efficient water and efficient cooling mechanisms. Otherwise, we are absolutely going to go back to, to torture the metaphor, the disgusting, dirty, toxic environment that was gold mining. We're just going to apply that, I guess, now to data mining. And I would love to see us do that a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, look, you don't want to invent last century's Pittsburgh, Steel Town, right? That's not what we're looking to do. However, here's let me give you the good news. The good news is we are taking this on in an open approach, it seems. So rather than each company, each player here, in essence, reinventing the wheel, starting from scratch on their own thing, keeping it close to the vest, not sharing it, we're in a collaborative way of doing this, taking a page from open source software even, right? Where you got like Linux Foundation or Cloud Native Computing Foundation, right? They're sponsoring these open things where that rising tide lifts all the boats, and then people can innovate from on top of that, right? And so with this sort of open approach, it speeds innovation, it speeds standardization and standards and best practices, and then allows people to sort of solo on top of that, right? And exhibit their creativity.
I believe the phrase is necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah, very true.
Well, if I may, part of the open thing here, and one of the big things that is in the announcement is and Kimberly alluded to this with Juniper being part of this and AMD being part of this, is the current sort of AI infrastructure stack is NVIDIA based, which means that it's NVIDIA's networking protocol, which is based on InfiniBand, whereas this will be Ethernet and most likely Ultra Ethernet, which is an initiative brought up by Jay Metz, and AMD's part of one of the founding members and running the Ultra Ethernet consortium to drive everybody towards the commodity of Ethernet versus the proprietary InfiniBand environment to be more open.
So, Jack, I noticed that they're using NVLink from NVIDIA in there. But I didn't catch what that was all about because I'm not a network specialist. So, if you want to,
that probably more that the existing NVIDIA GPUs are NVLink based, but there's a drive from AMD's GPUs and the other. I'm assuming, and I haven't looked into the Google and some of the other GPUs that are now becoming on the market, will probably be more Ethernet based rather than NVLink.
I think we have a habit of thinking we're going to solve the problems that we have with the current methods that we use for solving those problems. So, for example, I think fintech's going to get reinvented. We've gone through this evolution before with just take SQL, for example. When I started in databases, you wrote your SQL, you ran it, the CPU went wild, or the disk activity was insane. You pulled it back. You figured out how to make it more efficient. Then we had DBAs who would work on those SQL statements, try to make them more efficient. Then we built query optimizers that the DBAs use to optimize those. Today, the system optimizes the queries themselves. Yes, we can do things to make them more efficient ourselves, but that happens automatically. I think fintech is moving up the cycle and will be automated as part of this when it comes to token and token consumption and prompt optimization, things like that. So I think that will all be reinvented in a different way, rather than waiting for the bill to come out from AWS, Google, and Microsoft to say, damn, that's expensive. Who did what this month that caused that to spike?
Oh, I think we're going to reinvent a lot of things, Mitch. Asset management to understand where we're putting all these workloads, configuration management to make sure we're not overusing various resources, and specific resources like GPU instead of CPU. We've been doing CPU monitoring for the longest time. Now it's all about GPU. So now we've got to figure out new ways of monitoring even, let alone provisioning, access management, identity. Think about all the agents running it as AI. And now we've got to have agentic AI as part of our access management. What role is an AI agent going to take in our role-based access controls? There's all sorts. We're going to reinvent all sorts of management tooling to deal with this. This is always the way we do it.
Agreed. Hey guys, we got to pull the plug on this segment though, because we have time for our third segment. So great conversation though. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong Gang. We'll come back. Mike has more.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey folks, we're back, and if you watched the show last week, we were talking about how cumbersome multi-factor authentication is, but Jack Poller has an article on Security Boulevard that's worth a deeper dive on it because it suggests that maybe we're not as secure as we think we are with MFA, and maybe we're kind of leading everybody down a primrose path that might have a bad ending. But Jack, explain.
Well, let's start with, before we ever get to AI, we need to authenticate ourselves, right? And we have to prove that we are who we say we are. So we started years ago with passwords. Basically a shared secret that says, if you you have the same secret I do, you are who we say you are. And then we said, hey, passwords are easy to steal. We can convince people to give up their passwords very easily, and you store all those passwords in a central database that can be stolen. So let's change that from something the shared secret, to something and something you have, or something you are. And that would be multi-factor authentication, MFA, or two-factor authentication. And we do that with trading, like you have a cell phone, so we'll send you a message on your cell phone through a text message, SMS, or we'll send you a number to your email. The problem is, in the way that technology works, there is very easy to do what we call a man-in-the-middle attack, where we can put a proxy in there to fake that you're typing in on a real login page when you're typing on somebody else's login page, an attacker's page instead. And so you give up to the attacker your shared secret or your two-factor authentication code, and then they can take your information and log in as you and get your access tokens to whatever you're logging into. And then once they have that, they have your access and can do whatever they want. All of that is technically complex, but doable. Unfortunately, now we have a group called Tycoon, which has built this entire infrastructure to do all of that as a service. So now the criminals are running software as a service, just like the good guys are. And the bad guy software as a service says, hey, you want to go set up a page, pay us some money, and we have all the infrastructure that makes it look like, your login to Twitter. and it's not your login to Twitter, but somebody gets access to it, or your login to Bank of America. We can duplicate that for you, pay us some money, we'll do that, and then you get access to whoever you fish to get into that account. It's now so easy. It's basically your password-based authentication or shared secret authentication is at this point relatively meaningless. So what are the alternatives? The alternatives, there's sort of two good alternatives. One is something called passkeys that comes up with the FIDO organization, created something called passkeys, which doesn't use shared secrets, but uses public key cryptography. And it is a much more secure way to do that. And the good news is last week, Microsoft integrated passkeys into the Microsoft's login process. So now when a website offers you a passkey, you can store it with Microsoft or use your favorite password manager like 1Password or any of the other password managers to store your passkey. And it's a much more secure way to do it. The other way to do it is to use biometrics. Now, I want to put a caveat out here that there are two types of biometrics. There are biometrics that are stored only on the secure device in your computer or on your iPhone or your Android phone, where the capture of your thumbprint or your face never leaves the hardware chip, right? So there's no way for a bad guy to extract that and use that recording of your biometrics. There are some biometrics where your data is stored in the cloud. If it's stored in the cloud, it can be stolen and you don't want to use those. But anything where it stores it on your local computer is good. And then we have technology from a company called Badge and a couple of others, which never stores your biometrics at all. They've developed technology that can recreate a private key and public key pair from your biometrics at any time. So you can do FIDO keys and other things without ever storing your biometrics, but still use biometrics to prove you are who you say you are. So the bad news is it's now really easy to defeat password-based authentication and 2FA. The good news is we have other alternatives. We just have to get people to use them.
Can I ask a question about it? Are the alternatives more expensive? Because it seems like, that always winds up being a hurdle every time we have a chat about MFA.
They should not be more expensive. That doesn't mean they aren't, but they should not be. On the technology side, it requires the website developer, application developers to integrate the new technology, which imposes a cost on them. But all of these things have common libraries. There are Node.js libraries and other libraries to make it easy for people to do this. And the identity and access providers, as far as I know, are not charging extra to implement FIDO because they want to encourage, and they are actively encouraging, security and secure features and functionality. And they want to help you build an environment where your users aren't compromised.
So, Jack, a question on this, because I read through and the first thing that popped in my mind was whether or not what the barriers to adoption were, because change is difficult. We don't like to change, and on one of them, I'm thinking that you got a fob that you use for that, and people didn't particularly like that, even though it was very, very secure. So that never really quite took off. And the biometric elements, there's innate fear about it, if you will, on that. And that's, I believe, I'm a little skeptical about it, but anyway, there's innate fear and it's changed. So what are you thinking about can be done to help adoption, or, am I right in terms of concern about this adoption and process of getting there?
I think you're right in concerns of adoption. It took a very long time to convince people to use MFA. And in fact, the last time I did a research study on this in the 2023-2024 timeframe, just 2 years ago, more than half of organizations still didn't make MFA mandatory, even though we understand the benefits at that time of MFA. And implementing MFA today, while it's not, it is a much better situation than passwords only. It introduces friction into the login. It means there's another step to do. The good thing about FIDO passkeys is it is actually once you've set up the passkey, it becomes invisible to you. You enter your username on the website and it says, oh, you have a passkey. It goes, retrieves the passkey, does all of that in the background, and you don't have to do anything other than say, yes, I want you to let you use this passkey to get to this site. But it is a change in the way we behave in a login. And so that is part of the adoption friction. And I think the good news here is that the consumer websites and Microsoft are driving this because they face significant financial risk from stolen accounts. And so they're really interested in driving this.
I've got a few thoughts on this. Right. And I've been a proponent of MFA for a long time. Right. I think we all know that our basic password, trust system is broken. And we need to get away from passwords. There still is tremendous pushback on MFA. I know even here at our own organization, we instituted MFA a couple months ago, and the IT guy on our team who works with Mitch and I gripes still that he can't get people to sign on and do it right because people don't want MFA. However, even this MFA, Jack, what you're saying is, now becoming a little long in the tooth and not quite as secure. Instituting MFA, I've seen studies where it will reduce security incidents by 75 to 90%. Imagine that. If I told you I could reduce your security incidents 75 to 90%, why wouldn't you do that? Well, I'll tell you why. You mentioned passkeys. I consider myself a bit of a power user. I'll admit it, right? My name's Ilan. I go to a website these days and it said, would you like to use your passkey? Of course I'd like to use my passkey. I'm a security dude. Boom, I want to use my passkey. Which passkey would you like? Would you like your 1Password passkey? Would you like your Apple passkey? Would you like your Microsoft? Would you like to scan this QR code? And it was vexing me. I don't know which one should I use, but I use them all and see which one works best. And you know what? You know what they all do really? All those ones I just mentioned to you, they're all looking at my face or doing my fingerprint thing or, and letting me in there. Does it give us a better security? Absolutely. Is it next generation MFA? I don't know. Passkey versus MFA, they seem pretty similar in some regards, though what goes on behind the scenes is different. But clearly, I think our number one scourge is just the majority of people who still use plain old passwords, don't even use password managers, right? You can't tell me in today's day and age, if you're a user online, that you shouldn't have 25 different passwords, 30 different passwords for various sites and services you access. And if you're not using a password manager, let alone MFA for them, shame on you. You're the zebra in the herd waiting for the day where the lion picks on you.
So I'll take the other side of that conversation for a minute. So we have had ATM cards for decades. You go to the bank, you put in your card, and you typically type in four numbers,
yeah,
and you get access. I'm not hearing about people getting hacked by their bank accounts because they have four.
No, Mike, I got to call BS. You know why you don't hear about it? Because we've taken the pain away from you. It happens all the time, but the bank bears the cost. It happens all the time. The bank bears the cost. There are people cloning ATM cards. There are people stealing your PIN.
Go look up skimmers.
Skimmers,
credit card
all of
skimmers.
those things.
And yet I have not gotten an email from my bank in a decade saying I need to change my PIN numbers, and yet I will get an email from some website saying I got to change my password every other day.
You keep your debit card underneath your socks, inside your sneakers, and you never use them. Who are you kidding?
Underneath the mattress right next to his sock
the
drawer.
rest of us, I get new debit cards all the time. They say, we saw suspicious activity. Here's a new card.
Mike hasn't even opened up his
Right. He
PIN
never
from the
he
bank.
never called the 800 number to activate it even.
I will concede there are a couple of cards in my wallet that would classify as that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. But seriously, but there's a lesson there. Because it doesn't cost you anything. It's just a minor pain in the butt. Someone got my passcode. Someone got my debit card thing. I had to get a new debit card. I had to activate a different card. But it doesn't cost you in your wallet. When it costs you in your wallet, all of a sudden stuff gets real.
It's when you call the bank.
And
Yeah.
there is a lesson there, Alan. That's absolutely correct. And I think part of the lesson, I mean, two things which we haven't really talked about. One is that we need to place less of a burden on the end user for their own security, right? I mean, let's think about this logically. Most people can't handle risk. They don't get it. They don't understand it. You know, people writing their passwords down on Post-it notes and sticking them on under their keyboard. We've all seen this, right? Humans are awful at managing risk. And part of what you're talking about there with the ATM card, the bank is making it easy for you to manage your risk. They're doing the fraud detection. They're sending you a card proactively. You're not doing analytics on your spend. They are. And they're making it easy for you to deal with the risk.
And then the fact is, Andy, you don't have any risk because if anything happens, they eat it anyway.
Also true. Exactly. And the other part of this, by the way, is, and you know, Jack, this is amazing. This is one of the reasons I come on Techstrong TV, because I can learn stuff. I feel like Keanu in the Matrix now. I'm like, whoa, I understand identity. But MFA is absolutely broken. But one thing you didn't say in your article was, how about we don't have a user ID and password for every damn transaction? Look, when I go to the hardware store, I buy a new toilet. That's it. I'm not going to get another one tomorrow and then another one the next day. I don't need persistence in my identity
You've
for
never
that
had
transaction.
You've never had me install your toilet.
I was going
cover,
to say,
but
you've
you
never
wait for
broken
the
a
next
toilet
day.
on when you
That's
That's the
the
first
right
time
one
I've
to
heard identity compared to a toilet, but thank
And
you for
so-
that analogy.
Notwithstanding the rash, and I use the word advisedly, of connected toilets that are all of a sudden communicating with the cloud, doing analytics on my business, as it were. Maybe that's for another day. But the idea that we need a user ID and password for every transaction, I think, is a big problem as well. I know it's about data collection, right? It's about personalization. It's about, you know, data mining. I get why people do it. But that's one of my bugbears. Look, I don't mind using a token. I don't mind using, you know, MFA, using my Windows Hello or a YubiKey or whatever it is, if it's going to help me. But there's just no reason why we need so many user IDs and logins for every transaction. No wonder people repeat passwords and get hacked because they get exposed.
Well, I don't want to, I could take 4 hours talking about this stuff, right? And there's you go down one path and it opens a whole bunch of others. But let's just say to Mike, one of the goals of FIDO passkeys and badge and the other types of technologies is to eliminate that database of passwords, user IDs and passwords that then gets compromised, that forces you to get a new password or a new card or whatever. It's getting rid of the shared secrets. Is how do we do this technology in such a way and then make it usable for, as Andy was talking about, the user interface part of it and removing the friction is part of that. There is a learning curve here that it's something different than a password, which is why it's named, it was called something else, but they called it now a passkey to put the pass in so that people would associate it with passwords, but it is a little bit different. And, it's going to take time. It's a learning curve. And, we still have organizations that say, your max length of your password is eight characters, right? I mean, that's just insane. There's absolutely no reason that your password should be space limited at all. We have infinite amount of storage. Why are we limiting length? But,
I got to remember that password somewhere. But let me look. I feel like we left something out of this conversation. We didn't discuss AI.
Well,
how does AI figure into this? And because let me tell you why. I think the identity problems that AI could cause, are going to make this stuff look like child's play.
Well, each of those AI agents has an identity, so it's going to get crazy.
And
Well, and
how do I know Mr. Smith from Zion, right, isn't now looking like Mitchell? Right, back to the red pill, blue pill scenario.
Mr. Anderson.
Well, let me just put one caveat out there. This is why we do not use voice authentication. Anybody who offers you voice authentication, refuse it.
Right? I mean,
and there's a lot of technical reasons why I'm giving that advice, but let's not dive there. Let's just say voice authentication is very easy to compromise.
in the world of AI cloning, you bet.
So I gotta go stuff some more money under the mattress, but this was interesting.
You might find an old debit card there. Anyway,
Few tokens.
guys, we're out of time. What a great discussion today, though. Great panel. You know, it was good having those Colorado people on. They're nice people. Mike, happy anniversary. Thank you all for watching. It's Monday. We'll be back tomorrow with more Techstrong Gang. A lot of our AWS reInvent coverage will be restreaming over the course of this week, so stay tuned for that on Techstrong TV. We're also putting a lot more of these and a lot of the events we cover up on our OTT app, because we realized it wasn't up there, though it was available on YouTube and our Techstrong TV website. So check out the OTT app on iOS, Google, or Amazon Fire, Roku, Apple TV.
And check out my new podcast, Agents of Dev.
Yeah, with a really snazzy opening that the Techstrong TV video whizzes came up with.
They killed it.
Cool. Yep. All right. Hey, Mitch, thanks for the plug on that. Have a great day, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Hey, everyone. Welcome back here to Techstrong TV. You know, I'm thrilled to have my next guest here on with us. I've actually known her for probably longer than she wants to admit that she knows me. Because, you know, she's a pretty young woman herself. But let me introduce you to Priya Doty. Priya is the Vice President of Solutions Marketing for BMC AMI at BMC Software. Priya, welcome to Techstrong TV. It's great to have you on.
Thanks, Alan, and great to see you again on a lovely Friday afternoon. So good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, remember, by the time people see this, it may not be Friday, but we did record this on Friday.
That's right.
So Priya, you know, of course, we're LinkedIn followers, friends, connections, whatever it is. I've seen you getting out there a little bit on the road, doing a bunch of things. Give people, you know, and it goes arm in arm with I guess it is conference season, number one. Number two, your role as VP of Solutions Marketing, I would have you do that. But give people a sense, Priya, of your journey, not just in the last couple of weeks, but how you came to be here at BMC in this role.
Yeah, well, you know what? It all goes back to DevOps, Alan. So I actually started my career as a developer, working alongside AS400s and then JavaScript and other things like that. And at some point, I morphed from being a developer to a product requirements writer, and from that to product strategy, and then solutions marketing. So it was this step journey. But I remember first meeting you when I started doing a lot with the DevOps community. And I remember finding you on LinkedIn and saying, wow, this guy's really active. I need to know him. I mean, my journey really did start in the development world. Today, like you mentioned, I'm VP Solutions Marketing for BMC AMI. But just taking a step back, you know, in terms of what we focus on at BMC and then diving into what I do. BMC software, I mean, many of you have probably heard of it, your listeners have, and it's evolved over the years. So the company today really focuses on helping customers to automate and bring to market, orchestrate, whether it's data, applications, systems, all the way from the core mainframe all the way out to the cloud. And that is really the core of what we are. We're an automation company. The piece that I cover is BMC AMI, and AMI stands for Automated Mainframe Intelligence. So it's kind of the best known secret in the industry that BMC supports the full stack of a mainframe software environment. And as you know, there's lots of companies out there that have mainframes running the IBM Z platform for various reasons. And I guess, what we're on a journey on at BMC is helping customers understand that it's optimization and transformation, but at the end of the day, it's an AI-driven optimization and transformation, if that makes sense. So that's the journey we're on. And it's been a good journey. I've been at BMC 2 years and, have launched the AMI Assistant product, which is our agentic AI, Gen AI framework. And it's just been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. As I mentioned before we got on camera, I just came back from KubeCon myself, Cloud Native Con. I forgot what one I was at before that. And now, of course, I'll be at reInvent. And, you can't walk 2 feet in the tech world without tripping over AI here, right? I mean, it is everywhere and anywhere all at once.
Yes.
But rightfully so, right? It is, well, it has the promise of changing everything, of disruption in so many places. And it's funny, there might be people out here and say, it could disrupt the cloud, it could disrupt that, but nothing disrupts the mainframe, right? Those mainframes, they're like cockroaches. They'll be here after the nuclear holocaust. Those mainframes will still be running,
Oh my goodness. They're battle tested, right? They're designed for anything.
Absolutely. Hardened to hardened.
Yeah.
Hardened as hardened is, right? But yet, even the venerable mainframe in the mainframe market is being, not severely, that's not the right word, but greatly impacted by Gen AI and agentic AI and what this can do. And it's on everyone's, it's top of mind for everyone. I know recently you guys did a 2025 mainframe survey about, and one of the issues or one of the topics covered was trusting AI. And this is a double-edged sword. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, the thing that was, I guess, really surprising is, you think about how much will somebody allow or be interested in an AI doing in your environment. And so we think of it as a spectrum of trust. And we asked a number of questions around, what kinds of things might you want to do with AI? And what was surprising is how many people were open to so many things working in that environment. And I think I'm also seeing it in the client base, outside of the survey. A year ago, it was, hey, we're dipping our toes, we're interested, we're testing. And this year they're coming back and it's, hey, I got to have a POC. I got to set this up. I got to do it. So they've made a rapid progression. And listen, they all know that nothing is going to be perfect, right? They're not going to have 100% accuracy, but they're willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that they've been socialized around it with the tools we're all using, every day. And we start to see them and we think, how can I do that at work and do it simpler and easier?
I agree with you. I think there's a couple of things there. First of all, I think there's good old-fashioned FOMO, right? People who fear of missing out, that everyone else is using it and they're not. I think secondly is quite frankly, I've never seen anything in 30 plus years in tech have this kind of on-ramp, right?
I know.
And here's something I think that's heartening. Your numbers and what you see in your mainframe survey are not very different with the same sort of outcome that we're seeing in other surveys. So for instance, I recently saw a survey of all developers, not just mainframe. 90%, 90% are using AI one way or another.
Yeah.
Which is probably in line, similar to what you're seeing they're playing. But here's the kicker. 40% don't trust it. 65, and they're still using it. 65% think it introduces instability. and still 90% use it. It's the same thing you're seeing. Yeah, it may not work yet, but we're still going to
Well, they're
use
still
it.
trying. Well, and I think to your point, I think part of it too is we're seeing a lot more of how do I explain what's here? How do I analyze the application? How do I understand what the root cause is? So it's almost like help me advise me what's going on. And then the next step is going to be sort of more of the automation of repetitive tasks. And to be clear, I mean, there's a lot of automation already in every software platform. So this is just taking it to the next step. But yeah, it's fascinating. I think the other little nit on the survey was there's a lot of younger generation in the mainframe community that's coming in, and they're much more open to the technology, and they don't have the same perceptions about mainframe that the next generation did. So their perception is it's a blank slate. Hey, I have this thing. Why can't I use AI here? So they don't see the same barriers that maybe earlier, people who worked on it earlier see.
You're right. I do think, people have preconceived notions. I do think maybe a lot of people who have been in the industry a while, look, to say that they're worried about their jobs with AI is an understatement, right? I think a lot of people are worried about what does it mean for their career and future. Nevertheless, though, the train's left the station. We're all playing with it. We're all using it. And so it really, I think, becomes a question of how do we get comfortable? How do we learn? How does AI earn our trust? How do we learn to trust it? And not as a replacement,
right,
but as a partner, as a 10Xer, if you will, as they call it. And, specifically when we talk mainframes, Priya, how's that kind of playing out?
Well, I mean, there's multiple ways to answer that question, right? I mean, some of it is our product roadmap and how we're strategizing around building out the roadmap for the product, but I won't bore you with all the gory details. I think that what we're seeing is, around leveraging it for particularly around development and then operations, right? And what we're seeing is it's a step function. So you start with the explain capabilities. You start with explain my code, help me understand it. Then the next phase is, all right, let me help me selectively refactor, right? Let me look at selectively pull out snippets of code, look for dead code, identify places that I might want to refactor, and let's go do that bit by bit. But we're not trying to do, mass transpilation of code, right? It's think about the ABCs. It's, thinking about first understanding, analyze what you've got, think about the business logic, and then go do the conversion, right? So that on the dev side, that's one place. On the ops side, it's really tapping into the AI ops journey that many customers are already on, but just taking it to the next step. Okay, so now how do we get from doing AI ops, using dashboards, pulling all of our monitors into one place, looking at AI, ML, but then taking that to the next step to get to how can I get better intelligence on what my root cause might be so that I'm not just, stabbing around in the dark, but I can really understand what it is. And that's what's here today. I think customers are very interested in what they call self-healing systems. And that's the other piece that we're looking at a lot right now.
Absolutely. I think one of the places where the mainframe, kudos to IBM and the new Z version and all this stuff. And and the whole mainframe software world, right? Not just IBM, but BMC obviously is one of the biggest. It's a small world when you look at the mainframe software providers, right? There's only 4 or 5 major ones. Done an amazing job on modernization, right? Today's mainframes run anything you want, basically, right? They're really great. I don't know if managing the mainframe has kept up with that, though. And I'm wondering if that's not an area where AI can really make a dent, and help us out.
I think so. And I mean, I think that's what we're seeing is that, what the customers are saying is, first of all, they don't see the platform as not modern. They see it as a modern platform because of all the, you can run GPU accelerators in there. You can run AI inferencing in there. I mean, there's lots of things you can do with it. But when it comes to optimization and transformation, that's how I like to think of it, because most of our clients at BMC, they're looking at how can I optimize and transform this environment, just like you said. And we think of it as sort of 5 key, we call them patterns, right? You think about reimagining your dev workflows. How can you make it better for the developer, refresh it, leverage AI, re-energize the operations teams. So again, leveraging AI, doing more, refactoring some of your code, recalibrating your resources. Quite frankly, you might want to, just think about, again, how are you doing data management? Should you be moving some of that data into a hybrid cloud environment? And then last but not least is security. You've got to continually recertify your solutions to make sure that they can hit the compliance goals you have, hit the security goals you have. And I think one of the biggest fallacies in the mainframe space, people have no idea how bad the insider threat vectors have gotten, like truly no clue how bad and how much they're exposed if they just assume that the hardware alone is going to save them, right? So that's kind of how we think of it. It's just, it's that mindset of how can I help you optimize and transform? And it's not about like doing everything at once. I mean, a lot of our clients, they get stuck in the compliance loop and they have to spend a lot of time on that every day. And others are spending more time dealing with, resiliency or, getting faster to market and innovating faster.
Absolutely. Priya, you mentioned the security thing too. And you know what? It's something I've spoken about before that I want to just mention on here is in many ways, the mainframe being as secure as it was at the machine level, at the, platform level, was its own worst enemy because it gave people this maybe false sense or heightened sense of security and allowed them maybe to take their eye off the ball or not focus on the security of the software. Don't worry about it. That mainframe is rock solid, right?
Right.
Most secure platform out there. We don't have to worry. Am I using an old package? Have I updated my packages? Have I,
Yeah.
And that's something that bears repeating to people. Just because it's a mainframe doesn't mean security is on autopilot.
Absolutely. And every customer group will go in and we'll ask them what their priorities are, and security is not at the top. And then they'll hear, oh man, these are the types of insider threats that could happen. These are the kinds of ransomware situations that could happen. And invariably they leave and the first thing on their mind is security.
Absolutely.
Well,
no, because it's a victim of its own success, right? We've all heard that it's the most secure platform out there, dollar for dollar. And so, you
are the
get
credentials
complacent.
Secure, right? That's the challenge.
Well, exactly, because that's the way in. People don't break in. The bad guys don't break in anymore. They log in, right?
Brilliant. Brilliantly said, Alan. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the truth. I want to talk about another big thing in the mainframe world, and that is, back during COVID, right? We all heard the horror stories. I can't get your unemployment checks out because that program was written in COBOL.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't have COBOL programmers. And thank God India still has a ton of people that are training in COBOL. We'll outsource it. But the fact of the matter is, I think one of the biggest movements in the mainframe world is a COBOL-to-Java conversion because, hey, it runs Java great.
Yeah.
Is that PR? Is that real? What's going on that end of the mainframe market?
I think there's a lot of different solutions out there, and some of them are more proven, but most of them are still very nascent. I think that customers are definitely, many of them have said for some time now they're looking at where should an application be run? What workloads belong on what platform? And that's been going on for a long time. So what I'm seeing is the desire is to convert, but do it in a smart way, right? And by the way, not everybody wants to go fully to Java. That requires more maintainability. It, requires, it's not as backward compatible. It may not have the same level of performance. So it's not a prescribed.
It also gets you on the hamster wheel. Right now I'm on Java. I got to upgrade every time Java does and all of those things. Where you can run COBOL code from 20 years ago, and it probably runs as good now as it did then.
Exactly. But at the same time, I think there's clients that are saying, well, if I'm writing in Java, that gives me a lot more strategic flexibility because I can get more programmers. It's easier to find. So it's really for us, what we're trying to do is, first of all, support Java across the platform. So that means, in the dev environment and the ops environment. And we've been on that journey for a while. And then what we've just announced in October is COBOL-to-Java, sort of refactoring support. But again, for BMC, it's how do we help you with that ABC? How do we help you analyze, look at the business logic, and then selectively convert? We're not going to be your partner to come and just do the transpilation of the code. And I don't think that's what we recommend people do. So,
Gotcha. How could our friend AI help us with this?
I mean, that's what AI does, is the COBOL-to-Java conversion. It's, AI starts with helping you understand the code. It can document the code literally at the click of a button. Think about something that might have taken weeks before. And then when it comes to the conversion, it's, a step-by-step, every step of the way, AI is there to help you convert the code. So it's pretty awesome, Alan, to see those Gen AI, I guess they're not algorithms, but just the LLMs and how they function and how they're having such an amazing impact.
And day by day.
I mean, day by day,
it gets better.
And the cool thing with BMC is we're embedding these functionalities into the existing suite. So if you already have the BMC Amy DevX product, I mean, it becomes part of the suite as you upgrade and, continue on your versions.
Well, I think it goes back to what we spoke about before. This is why we're seeing the pickup we are. This is why we're seeing the usage, even in spite of trust and everything else.
That's right. It's there. Use it.
Another place where it excels is upskilling, even helping people upskill themselves.
Yeah.
Right. So sort of like knowledge expert chat, right?
Yeah.
You want to learn how to do something. And it's funny. Personally, I've been forcing people to do this now. When they ask me to do or they ask how to do something, or they ask how they should go about doing something, what they used to Google for, I said, don't Google it. Ask AI, it'll show you better. And it really is when you go side by side. Now, there are people, and I've written an article on this, that say AI rots your brain a little because it almost makes it too easy. At least with Google, you had to go through the search results and click on things and pick out, the nuggets and pearls that you needed. Where with AI, man, it just delivers it for you. But when time is money and money is time and there's a crunch on, you like that too. I mean, that's a preferred method, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and listen, Google isn't perfect either. Google isn't perfectly accurate either.
Getting worse every day, I
right.
might add,
Yeah,
but that's another story.
But yeah, I mean, I think what we're finding with the upskilling piece is we launched a knowledge expert within Amy Assistant, and it's just, a standard chat functionality, but it's from within the product, right? And that means that if you're a newbie, you can ask it questions, but also if you're an experienced person or you're just trying to remember something that happened before, you need to go look it up, or you're in mid-career, it can help any level of skill to get better and faster and ultimately help to onboard people faster, which is key. And then I just go back to, so I know you're an ex-New Yorker like me. I'm a New Yorker. And I was on the subway.
You don't have the accent anymore. I do, but we'll talk about it another time. Go ahead.
But I was on the subway and I saw this ad and it said, why would you use the same GPT that you use to order pizza to pick stocks?
That's a good, that makes you think.
It makes you think, right? So I think it's the same with the vision we have for the knowledge expert. It's, why would you use the ChatGPT generic function that's not necessarily domain trained or context aware to ask questions about your specific mainframe environment?
Yeah, absolutely.
You could, but should you?
No, you could, and you might get good responses some of the time.
Right.
But I think that is the next phase of this, where we move off these frontier models that are, this wide and have the whole sum of knowledge of mankind or something in there, right? They scrape the entire internet.
That's right.
And there's a question of how much more could they scrape? They scraped all the data already.
Right.
to more of, let's call them SLMs
Yes.
or more, specific, right? And contained also so that they can't be poisoned, by general kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they're much more domain specific. I think we're going to see more and more of that. That's going to become the norm, right? Than a one size fits all
That's right.
LLM.
And listen, BMC is curating the best of, we'll look at any specific situation, we'll curate the right LLM for that problem, and then we'll help the customer to train it with their own data. That's the goal, right?
And that is, it's quite frankly, what I've been doing here, even with our own, I wrote an article on this last week about the future of journalism and media and AI.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we use it here, and I trained it on my style, on my voice, on what I want to, to be like. And it absolutely works, and it's in there. But here's the other thing, though. We're seeing this, like, for developers, it's inside the IDE,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
literally, as they're coding, the AI is correcting, suggesting, helping. It's almost like an alter ego, if you will. That embedded contextual expertise, if we can call it that, is really, I think, the future, not just for software development, but for software operations management, and probably in a lot of things outside of tech too.
Yeah.
But, once we get to that point where it's not this frontier model of everything anywhere at once, but very specific and very deep, and you build it in, like it's being built into IDEs today, I really think you're going to see a huge productivity kind of jump from that.
And that's what even we're seeing internally. I mean, we're using our own IDE for some of our assembler developers and just for Code Explain, and they're seeing productivity increases on the order of 20 to 30% just from that.
Priya, this is a great discussion, but I feel like we've gone over our time here. Let us take a break here, and I'm going to bring you back, and we're going to continue our discussion with a part 2, if that's okay. Cool. Hey, you're watching Techstrong TV. I'm here with Priya Doty. We'll be right back. Check out part 2.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Ilan Peleg, who's the CEO of Lightrun, and we're talking about the impact that all these AI coding tools are starting to have on our backend DevOps workflow processes. Ilan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting me, Mike. Great to see you again.
Good to see you as well. I think what we're talking about is not wholly unexpected. I mean, sometimes when you put more stuff on the front end of something, it's eventually going to break the back end of something. And what we seem to be seeing is a lot more code is being generated and it's moving through those pipelines. It's not clear to me that all that code is making it into production, but it seems to be stressing our workflows and the teams that manage that. So what are you seeing and what are the challenges?
Super interesting. So actually, what we've seen is that, AI assisted code has literally become the new reality, right? I think Dora recent Google report claims that around 90% of the developers out there already adopted some sort of AI assisting, coding tools, coding agents, and the likes. So, developers simply now spend less time writing code themselves, but rather more like prompting, right? By debugging, by coding, and then the bottleneck is moving ahead to, reviewing the code, debugging, fixing, verifying. In fact, Dora also claims that 60 to 70% of developers' time is now spent actually in debugging and fixing their code and fixing their code. And the bottleneck, again, is moving to the runtime side of things. And basically, from the moment the code suddenly, meets real world conditions, real world, life, and suddenly code is not siloed anymore and is part of an overarching system, including the runtime, including scale, customer data potentially, operations, APIs, third-party dependencies, and so forth. So this is where, suddenly things start, break. On the contrary, the past year has been also the most expensive year in software outages. Speaking of, the major outage of CrowdStrike of last year and just I'm not sure exactly when this one is going to be broadcasted, but last month we've seen these major outages coming from the big hyperscalers such as AWS that shut down the world at least for a few hours. Same with Azure and so forth and so forth. So both trends kind of contradict and conflict, and this is exactly the gap that we're feeling here at Lightrun. We help fix issues at the pace of AI. So fixing issues and specifically runtime issues should be also streamlined. And this gap is actually widening, and this is exactly where Lightrun is being super helpful. Troubleshooting, remediating software once software is already operational, potentially serving customers at scale. We should move faster because otherwise this bottleneck is widening, and we need to help engineering teams fix issues at the same pace they actually develop code. So developing code is not the bottleneck anymore, but rather making sure it's running and operating right.
So to your point, it seems like I hear the same things, and developers are spending more time reading code than writing it. But the problem with debugging it is they didn't generate it and they don't really understand how it was constructed. So how do we help them debug something?
That's a great one. Actually, to your point, understandability becomes a key challenge. I mean, eventually when wheels hit the road, this is the challenge. Like, it's not me in my siloed dev machine writing my code in the IDE, but rather code suddenly should operate at scale, and there's so many different requirements of how software should operate at scale. So key element is supporting the runtime context. Actually, this is one of our key announcements, which is us democratizing runtime context to the wider ecosystem. Speaking specifically of the coding or testing phase, imagine that each time developer is introducing a new piece of code, potentially even generated by AI or AI code assistant tool, he will have runtime signals, eventually letting you know how the software is going eventually to behave at the runtime. So it's not only about writing code that works, but it's about writing code that runs at scale resiliently. So I think like helping engineering teams not only debug the software, but even before debugging is happening, making sure that the software they write doesn't really work on their machine, but rather it fully operates and is resilient to sustain the scale, sustain, so many potential, vulnerabilities, potential bugs, potential outages is something that should be kept in mind in the hearts of every developer out there, making sure he's not just, shipping code, but making sure that the code will eventually run and operate smoothly at the runtime.
So do you think developers are spending more time actually doing that? Because it seems like, they're writing more code and they're enjoying the productivity benefit, but it's not clear to me that they're using that time to go back in and optimize the code, or for that matter, look for vulnerabilities.
In fact, Dora also claims that developers using AI code assistants also introduce 41% more bugs.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you move fast, you also break things. People tend to say that even before the Gen AI era. So it's definitely happening. And I think the key here is not only about embracing AI for mainly productivity gains, but making sure you're embracing AI in a resilient, safe manner. So quality is becoming, the next frontier. So how do you make sure that developers, are not becoming lazy and simply not accountable, or how eventually the software that is about to serve your customers and help you achieve your business goals eventually will help you in achieving your business goals, rather than just developers shipping much more lines of code because potentially they might become a bit lazy and reliant on those AI magical tools. It's truly magical out there, but this magic eventually can somehow introduce some quality issues. In fact, this is what the study, all of the studies out there already prove. So again, in order to eliminate this one, developers, engineering team should be equipped with fully the runtime context and how eventually the code they're shipping truly is about to behave when when the wheels hit the road, right?
The other thing that seems to be happening too is that as more of this code gets into production environments and it's verbose, the cost of running it seems to get more expensive because we're processing things that we probably didn't need to in the past. So our costs going to go up.
Definitely. One reason is simply having introducing much more lines of code, much more compute, much more code that eventually is running. The other thing is AI also, or embedding AI agents as part of your software delivery lifecycle, or embedding much more AI generated code also introduces like much more non-deterministic behavior that is a bit unpredictable, which can definitely raise your costs of maintaining, scaling your environments. So definitely it's another huge concern. Again, it ties back to my previous point, which is the operate side or the runtime is becoming the side we should all be careful now, because it's quite clear that AI already reshaped how fast code is being generated. Now we need to make sure that at the runtime you're maintaining your resilience metrics, cost, and obviously security. So all of those operational objectives should be kept, and you should also expect to higher, I would say, standards there, because as AI already proved all of us, it can help us move faster. It should, and we should expect to have better customer experience, better resilience. So shortening, processes at the upside, both from cost, but also from resilience, uptime, troubleshooting time, security remediation, all of those. We as consumers for software is running the world, right? For consumers of those digital assets, we definitely expect higher standards over there as well.
What's to be done about all this? I mean, I can't put the genie back in the bottle. These guys are going to be using AI coding tools. So what do we need to do on the back end to kind of absorb all that?
So I would say much more guardrails and governance, and quality gates in, again, as you move fast, you want to make sure that you keep moving fast, but not breaking things while doing so. What we started to see is that the new reality is actually a reality where code is cheap and bugs are expensive. Quite funny, but it's actually the reality. So I think CIOs, engineering leaders, and whoever is responsible for the SDLC must take proactive actions in order to verify that eventually the software delivers higher standards of quality and resilience. And I'm not sure we're there yet, because as mentioned before, coding has been all like streamlined. You write code in minutes, but eventually when but when shit hits the fans, what happens is that it takes you days, weeks to respond. At least when you calculate FT, right? You literally need to onboard tens or even hundreds of engineers in a war room, group them together to make sure that software is being remediated. It shouldn't be that way in the Gen AI era. It should be streamlined, and if code is being written in minutes, it should be fixed in minutes.
Will we therefore need more AI on the back end to make up for the deficiencies of the AI on the front end, and what might that look like?
I think taking a deeper look at the SDLC and different playbooks that exist in enterprises or software organizations already adopted in the past, each one of those should be automated using the power of AI. It might be a very custom built internal playbooks, internal policies, internal governance. All of those that are still manual should be streamlined with the power of AI. Everything from the front end up until the back end, automations, DevOps, your SDLC. So my recommendations, CIOs, VP engineering, and generally speaking, engineering leaders and whoever again oversees the SDLC, use AI to automate and streamline all of those processes across the board, from front end to back end, digital experience, everything from code to production. Definitely.
So we're coming up on the end of the year, which means we'll be gearing up for the new year. So what's your crystal ball telling you that 2026 is going to be like?
I believe that 2026 is more about the market acknowledging that, AI literally changed the landscape, especially for engineers, especially for the SDLC. There's a new term out there which is called ADLC, agentic development lifecycle. So agents are really conquering the SDLC and are really creating a new form of generating software. But those also introduce again much more risk and much more like non-deterministic behavior. So enterprise and software organizations will simply be conquered by more and more, agents farms running tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of agents should be now orchestrated, should be now governed, and should also introduce their reliability standards. So I think day zero was more around embracing AI for productivity gains. Day one, I mean 2026, will be more around governing those and making sure they eventually help us in achieving our business goals rather than degrading the quality of our software.
All right, folks, you heard it here. Hey, if we don't put the governance tools in place, then this AI stuff is going to quickly become too much of a good thing. Hey, Ilan, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Mike.
All right, and back to you guys in the studio.
Hey everyone, welcome back here to our coverage of AWS reInvent 2025 from Las Vegas. I'm really happy to have my friend Margaret Dawson here. Margaret is the CMO at SUSE. But beyond that, she's one of the most interesting people that I love interviewing, to tell you the truth.
And here I'm being your partner today.
Yes.
We're doing a different thing.
You know, if you can't tell, SUSE is our sponsoring partner for our Techstrong TV coverage this year at reInvent. You've seen this up here, all throughout the show, but now we actually have someone from SUSE here to talk to. Here's the deal though, we're gonna be doing a couple of different interviews. Today, right now, I just want to kind of lay out, Margaret, sort of an overview. And also I wanted, look, you're a veteran of reInvent.
Yep.
Right? You've been here a bunch of times, as have I. This one feels a little different. And if you don't mind, let's start right with that.
Okay.
What's different this year?
Well, what's the same is it's still a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen the count, but it is massive. So it feels bigger than ever. It feels like we've come fully back from whatever downturn we had.
Yeah.
What's different? The one thing that's interesting, and you and I have chatted about this a little bit, is that we're not hearing the word cloud. We're not really hearing
Which is
hybrid
kind of
cloud.
weird for AWS.
But I think it's just because we're there, it's inherent. I will say in conversations with people that are non-Amazonians and people that are here at the conference, we are still having that conversation about how do I manage things across on-prem all the way to multi-cloud. In my Amazon meetings, we are talking about multi-cloud. We are talking about how do we have that seamless experience for our customers. So it's there. I just think it's under the weight of everything AI.
Yeah.
Right. So everything is kind of under that bigger umbrella, which you'd expect.
It seems to be all AI all the time.
Yep.
And it's not just the word cloud. In years past, you'd come to an AWS conference and you'd spend a lot of times talking about things like S3 or Lambda and serverless, Kubernetes even, right? All of that has become sort of cosmic background radiation as we focus on how AI is going to empower all of this.
Well, all of AI is integrated into all of that. I will say if you go into some of the sessions that are more technical, you're still getting that. Like I was at an EKS session yesterday. I was at an Amazon Linux session yesterday. So you're still getting into the guts and getting roadmaps and all that, but it's a level down, right? So you're probably not seeing that quite as much. But I think you're right. Like we're talking about, okay, how is AI helping us with Linux? How is AI helping us with container management or Kubernetes? How is AI helping us with general management of our cloud ecosystem?
Absolutely. I want to talk about because it's when we say AI, it's like AI in all its flavors.
Yep.
But before we get into that, you mentioned Amazon Linux.
Yep.
And we'll probably talk about it a little more in depth later, but I know SUSE had a big announcement around this.
And this is exciting because I think that at this AWS reInvent, we're really transitioning from being a listing on a marketplace to a strategic partner. And to me, the difference is when you start adding extra value to their software, right? And that's what we're doing with Amazon Linux, with what they announced around supplemental packages for Amazon Linux, or SPAL, which, it's a cute name, SPAL. And so we are providing open source components that have been tested, verified, secured, et cetera, as part of those packages. And so what I love about this is that our passion is open source. I think Amazon is a huge consumer of open source, but you don't necessarily see that as a customer.
Right.
And now they're bringing that choice to their customers in a secure, in a reliable way, which is what we do, right? That's like our secret sauce. So to me, that transition is exciting. And then the second thing, if we just kind of keep going with what we're announcing, is we now have SUSE Rancher for AWS, which is a SaaS solution. So we now have two.
Okay, I didn't realize it was SaaS.
Yeah, we have two SaaS. So we have Observability Cloud and we have SUSE Rancher that are both delivered SaaS through the marketplace. No touch. So, try before you buy, the whole thing. And I think that's also kind of moving that lever to a new place. And with that, we can now manage not only EKS, but any flavor of Kubernetes, right?
Wow.
So if someone has EKS, which a lot of customers are leveraging their Kubernetes, but let's say they also have 2 or 3 other flavors of Kubernetes across things, we can now manage all of those clusters. The original intent was just managing multiple clusters of EKS, which is very hard, right? Amazon has a very strong management plane kind of per Kubernetes cluster.
But not.
This way, right, we can help you manage all of those clusters plus any other flavor.
I think that also comes into play if you're using multi-cloud, right? You've got some
100%.
Kubernetes on AWS, some's on Google or Microsoft or somewhere else or Oracle, wherever. You could manage them all with that.
That's right.
I want to go back to SPAL, S-P-A-L. So I'm a security guy. I've got 25, 30 years before we called it cyber.
Yep.
One of the biggest problems we face right now is this, what we call software supply chain security. Right? Because software today is kind of Frankenstein. We put together a lot of components, pieces, scripts, add a little special sauce, and out it goes. Being able to put in these components and pieces that we know are secure. They're not injected with malware. They're up to date. There's someone else's job to make sure they're
But there's still all the open source pieces that the developers love, right? So we are testing, and that is exactly what you want. As if I was a CIO at an enterprise right now, you want your developers to build the apps the way they want to build them, but you cannot afford to have an untrusted or potentially vulnerable component in any way.
If you're a CISO, a CISO,
well, CISO would be even more that way. Yeah, correct.
You're loving this because that's how malware gets injected
100%.
into our supply chain.
Yep.
Right?
And I think that's critical. And I mean, this is our whole value prop, right? Is taking open source and putting it through that trusted supply chain. And I was thinking about this, an analogy, and I love cars, so I just went back to cars. Like, you think about the old days with Ford, they built everything. Every component was Ford, every manufacturing line, the whole supply chain was a single company. Airplanes, same way, Boeing.
Yep.
Today, everything
Third
is
party.
subcomponents.
Yeah.
And what happens if you get a component in even a physical car or an airplane that hasn't been gone through that testing and security and all those things, and something breaks down? You can never find it. Same thing with code. Think about it. One of these little libraries or components or tools isn't trusted. To find that piece once you've built out an application is very, very hard. So how you bring in that trusted supply chain is critical.
Absolutely. But this is a very elegant solution to that, right? And
they don't have to leave Amazon, because remember, developers love working in AWS. They do.
Yes, they do. It is and that's really the AWS secret sauce.
It
right?
is.
They grab the
I feel like we forgot one of our announcements.
Yes, you did. There's a third one.
There is. The other big one is we are integrating Amazon Q and Amazon Bedrock. So two foundational pieces of their AI story, with both of our Linux and SUSE Linux Enterprise and SUSE Rancher Prime.
Really?
So now the capabilities around those two AI solutions can be fully utilized when you're using
Within SUSE.
Amazon. Correct.
You know, there's another sort of undercurrent that I wanted to hit on, and that is, you know, some people call it modernization, some people call it transformation, but it's and I'm not pointing fingers or anything, but a lot of people's VMware licenses tripled, right, as part of the acquisition. And it's not necessarily that they're moving off of VMware because of that license upgrade, but it's giving them time, a pause to reflect and say, hey, what options do I have?
Well, and I think what's important is that most of those people, and the reason we're calling it modernization or transformation, is they're not trying to replace what they already have in their traditional, or sometimes we call that legacy infrastructure. They're trying to look at this transition as a way to get into cloud native.
Yep.
So if you can have a virtualization solution that moves your VMs towards the future in a way that is somewhat elegant, you know, and then you can move to containers from there, that's what you want. Because right now that migration can be sometimes challenging.
Yes.
And so for SUSE, that's our sweet spot. So what we're saying is, look, we're not gonna go into your data center and replace all that. But if you wanna move some of those workloads to cloud native over time, we have a virtualization solution that is very sweet, and now we've made it easier than ever to move those VMs very, very quickly over to SUSE, and then you're on the path, you're on the same platform, same Rancher platform. SUSE virtualization lives on Rancher, and so you can get to cloud native much more easily, and it can be managed in the same way. So that's a key thing. I mean, I'm just thinking about this common theme is managing things in a common way, a single control plane, and we do that with both virtualization and containers on Rancher.
I love it. And it is, you know, whether you want to call it modernization, transformation, I don't care. It is the path to getting onto the cloud without having to necessarily move everything to the cloud. But it's also about having one foundation, one platform that allows you to manage no matter where you are, whether it's AWS in your data center or another cloud provider or what have you.
And that's critical because some people think they have to consolidate to have that control. And in some cases for sovereignty, maybe that's true. But I think most people want that control, but they also want choice. So how do you get choice with control? I mean, to me, that's SUSE.
So SUSE, I was just going to say, you spell it S-U-S-E. But I feel like I'm on a TV commercial. But, you know, you mentioned sovereignty. I do want to come back to that. We don't have time to jump into it right here because I wanted to return to all the many flavors of AI and that we're hearing here. You know.
No, I think this is something Amazon is doing very well at this, right? They have Bedrock, which is really all about foundational models, right? And how you can plug those in. And they're really starting to say, I don't know if it's bring your own LLM, but they're making it easier for you to work with many, many different models.
Yes.
With Q, they're really bringing together, you know, agentic AI, generative AI in one place. So while we are seeing, I guess, a merging of these different flavors, I think we do need to be careful not to just say AI too loosely and assume that everyone knows what we're talking about, because there's very different things under that larger vernacular.
Umbrella, sure. You know, Margaret, you mentioned that it gives you freedom around your AI choices, what frontier model you want to use.
Right.
But also they announced something else called Forge, which allows you to create your own frontier model. Now, look, there's only 4 or 5 frontier models in the whole world that we're all having to use right now. The ability to do that and bringing it down so that SMEs, small, medium enterprise and enterprises can create their own is an amazing, you know, choice, or it gives people options to really do this. I don't know how many people are actually going to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that's going to be a
problem.
rare thing. But let's go back to what you just said, because I think thematically at reInvent and at AWS, something that excites me is that we are talking more about open source. We are talking more about choice. We are talking more about allowing people to work the way they want to work as they work with AWS and their, I don't know, thousands of partner ecosystems. And that is exciting because I think that is a shift just culturally or value-wise. And I think, you know, everyone sees that is the future and it's great for customers.
Absolutely. I want to talk about partner systems and everything else. But we've got a few more interviews we're going to do. Stay tuned. We've got a great bunch of SUSE information, and not just SUSE.
We've got our Amazon
AWS,
partners,
the partners, everything going on here in reInvent. I'm looking forward to it, Margaret. But it's not just Margaret and I. We have more people coming on. So stay tuned for that. You're watching Techstrong TV. We're at AWS reInvent, sponsored by SUSE. Hey everyone, welcome back to our coverage of AWS reInvent 2025. It's been an interesting 2 days, packed full of information and announcements, innovation, a lot of AI, and a lot more too. Glad you can join us. This next panel promises to be one of our best, so I'm glad you're here to watch it with us. Let me introduce you to our panel members, and then I'll let you know what we're talking about. I want to start on my far right, gentlemen. Well, there's only two gentlemen here, me and him. So let me start with Spencer.
Sure.
Spencer, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. So I'm Spencer Dillard. I lead EC2's edge businesses, including local zones, AWS Outposts. But for today, more relevant, I also lead our Amazon Linux, commercial Linux, and Windows businesses, in addition to some other areas of AWS. And I've been at AWS since 2011. So lived through quite a few changes and excited to talk about what we're doing.
Absolutely, Spencer. Welcome and thanks for being here. Next to Spencer, we have Shri. And Shri, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Shri Sunku. I'm a product manager for Amazon Linux. I've been with Amazon Linux for around 3.5 years. I'm excited to talk to you more about Amazon Linux and our new features for it.
Thank you, Shri. And to my immediate right, you may have seen her on one or two already of our panels and interviews here at AWS reInvent coverage. Christine.
I'm Christine Puccio. I lead our AWS growth strategy for SUSE, and been doing that for about a couple of years now. And this year has just been so packed with so many great announcements, and I'm really excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Yes, we're going to focus in today a lot on Amazon Linux, but I want to preface all this with, Christine, it is you kind of shepherd the AWS SUSE relationship, and in my mind, at the very highest level, I think it bears repeating. It's a strategic relationship, and it was announced as a strategic relationship on a lot of different levels here, right? This Amazon Linux is one of 3 or 4 different areas we've been, looking at over the last day or two. So it's an important relationship to SUSE. It's an important relationship to AWS, and I think good job. Nice job.
Many people involved as well.
No, I know, but you know what? Someone heads it up and is responsible. I've always learned, I've done a lot. I've done 4 or 5 startups in my life. And a lesson I learned, if it's not someone's full-time job, it doesn't get done. Mm-hmm. So
that's what they told me. That's what I got in the position.
I've learned that the hard way. So good for you. But guys, let's kick it off, right? I want to focus in, as I said today, on the Amazon Linux piece of it. Now, our audience out here, everyone knows AWS. Everyone knows AWS gives you a lot of choices around Linux, including SUSE for what, 20-something years, or as long as there's been an AWS. Mm-hmm. But Amazon Linux is a different kind of animal, right? It's Amazon's Linux. Shri, you're the Amazon Linux expert, aren't you? So let's start here for people who may not be as familiar maybe with what is Amazon Linux, what makes it special, mm-hmm. what are some unique characteristics? I know it's going through a regeneration as well. Mm-hmm. Share with our audience, if you will.
Sure. Amazon Linux is a Linux distribution that was created by AWS, and it was developed by AWS. It's also being maintained by AWS. The first version of Amazon Linux was launched in 2010. Actually, 2025 marks 15th year birthday for Amazon Linux. So
Wow.
it's a special year for us. So it's been a long time. 15 years is a long time, and we've learned a lot from our customers, from the changes happening upstream. So it's been fantastic to see the evolution of Amazon Linux over these 15 years. The latest version is AL 2023. When I say AL, it is short for Amazon Linux. So for the audience, it's easy to understand. So Amazon Linux is mainly used because it is optimized for AWS. It comes with deep AWS integrations with various other services. For example, EKS, ECS, AWS CLI, and various other services that you can think of. It helps reduce operational burden for our users because think of it as like when you're launching an instance, for example, you have to think of various parameters. For example, network configurations, attaching IAM roles, or EBS volumes, etc. And Amazon Linux has integrations with all of these so that when you launch an instance on EC2, it just works out of the box. And last but not the least is Amazon Linux helps you lower your cost of ownership.
Yeah.
So how does it do this? While our customers still pay for the compute resources, Amazon Linux is free of cost. It has no licensing fee. And on top of that, the AWS support is included as part of Amazon Linux. It's like, really, it's a big thing for our customers. So all these factors make Amazon Linux special. And Spencer, please add on.
Sure. I think a few of the things I would add, really great introduction, overview of why it matters to us. Amazon Linux is used by basically every AWS team internally. It's used for our own infrastructure. And it is a Fedora-based OS. It originally started as a Red Hat clone. A few years ago, we shifted to being Fedora-based, which has introduced a number of aspects that drive our thinking going forward. And in addition to the total cost of ownership that Shri mentioned, we really see it as critical to the security that is important to our customers. That one of our most important properties is to ensure that we are providing up-to-date patches. We often support kernels that are older, which is good. It's a challenge, but we're really trying to focus on security and ensuring that we are providing as secure a solution as possible, while where possible, really minimizing the effort for customers to have to be forced into a migration or things like that. Obviously, at some point, you have to. And at the same time, we're also providing out-of-the-box integrations with things like Elastic Fabric Adapter, Elastic Network Adapter, drivers for AI and NVIDIA chips and various things. So really ensuring that whatever you want to run on AWS, it will work on Amazon Linux. And so we're really excited about what we've done to make sure that more customers and users can run their workloads on Amazon Linux.
Absolutely. Shri, you mentioned the latest version is AL 2023.
Correct.
But in terms of backward compatibility, my understanding is we're going to end of life support for AL 2022.
It's called AL2.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
AL2. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's pretty imminent.
That's right. So end of support for AL2 is upcoming on June 30, 2026. So approximately 6 months from now. That's when that'll go. That version AL2 will go on end of support, and AL 2023 is the latest.
I would imagine, though, it's a rather seamless experience to migrate or update from AL2 to AL 2023.
It really depends a lot on what the customer is using. And one of the key reasons that the partnership with SUSE has been really important is that it unblocks a lot of cases where customers have been challenged. Because moving from Red Hat Enterprise Linux clone to Fedora-based has really has meant a shift in what packages are available, for especially the EPEL packages that are available on Red Hat repos, those need a solution, right? And customers don't generally want to go build and compile and download the source and deal with their own patching. So being able to provide these additional packages is essential to reducing the effort for customers to migrate. And going forward, this is something that we really see as absolutely central to our vision for Amazon Linux, is ensuring that first and foremost, we're maintaining security. That will be our top priority and continue to be. But borderline more important is migration and minimizing the effort, because the reality is if there is effort to migrate, then many customers won't. And in not migrating, they actually end up being less secure. So in many ways, that migration friction
is actually security.
Can trump security as a tenet that we consider.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, you mentioned Fedora. I'm not going to get into the whole Red Hat
Stuff.
Yep.
stuff. Believe me, that's a good word, stuff. But what I do want to mention is the idea of enterprise Linux, right? Mm-hmm. Now, SUSE has an enterprise Linux, and I always do the initials, but you guys call it SLES. I say SLES, but tomato, tomato. It's a true enterprise Linux. Red Hat has an enterprise Linux too. Amazon Linux is an enterprise Linux too, and that's really what I want to emphasize for the audience here, right? It's an enterprise Linux distribution, and so it is. It's strategic, right? Mm-hmm. Now, let me pivot to announcements, right? Beyond the strategic relationship between SUSE and that Red Hat I spoke about, there was some specific Amazon Linux SUSE integrations, partnership kind of announcements. Christine, this is your baby.
Oh, well, I think, first of all, this has probably been one of the most, heartfelt projects that I've worked on, because I think it was a first of two companies coming together that traditionally could be competing for the same, workloads, but it was having the engineers from our side, our Linux group, and your side just coming together and building a concept and requirements document and really looking at how we address security together. How do we address building the packages? What packages do we prioritize based on customer feedback? And at first it was funny to see the engineers and everybody in the room together. It's like, why are we here together? But at the end of the day, our value at our company is about choice. And we know that our customers are always going to operate various different workloads on various different operating systems. And so it just became, we were able to help in this instance and not just provide packages, but actually increase the volume of time that it would take in order to do that themselves. And I think that's where the unique partnership is in this. And when I first saw this project and was read into it, I was like, wow, this is really super cool, and this is kind of a first. And I really love working on those types of projects, and it's been a real pleasure to work with Amazon and AWS on this.
Likewise.
I don't think we mentioned the term, and I want to make sure we get it out here. And that is, I say the initials, you say the name, but SPAL, SPAL.
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 Yes.
That's why I say the initials and say but SPAL, SPAL, and that's what you're referring to a lot here, and it is unique. Think about this, right? You're taking packages that in essence exist in SUSE or Enterprise Linux and making them portable and usable by Amazon Linux. And look, this is a great day for open source, because that's what open source is about, right? The ability to have portable code like this that can move from one Linux to the other. Somewhere Linus is smiling on that, right? And so it's I've never heard, honestly,
what I'm
I've never heard of anything like it, but it's really cool.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that has enabled this is that we have a common value of allowing enabling choice. And from the AWS perspective, we don't want to tell customers how to run their workloads. We want to advise them where there are things that they should be aware of or concerned about, et cetera. But our goal is to make sure that they can achieve solving the problems they need to solve, however that is. And so it's pretty natural working together to say, at the end of the day, that is what this is about, is making sure that customers can choose the solution that's right for them. And Amazon Linux may not be right for some others. That's okay. What we care about is that customers can solve their problems.
Yeah.
Agreed. Let's, if you wouldn't mind, and Shri, I hope I'm asking the right person this, but let's peel that back a little bit. The specific packages, what kind of functionality, what's in these packages?
Sure. So Amazon Linux actually has approximately 2,500 packages already. A lot of our customers use these packages, which are a part of the core repository. However, there are some packages that helps you increase the productivity for a developer or for a system administrator. For example, let's take the package called as R. R is used for statistical analysis and programming. And this kind of package was not a part of the core Amazon Linux. It is an extra or an additional package. So you actually would find these packages as part of the EPEL repository. EPEL is extra packages for enterprise Linux. And our customers, as they were migrating from AL2 to AL 2023, wanted to know these packages. Like, hey, I use this package, I rely on this package. Can you help me provide these packages? Because otherwise, the choice that our customers have is to build these packages from source, which, if you can imagine, consumes a lot of time, resource, and they have to maintain it, which is a huge deal, right? So on our customers' request, we understood that, okay, some of our customers rely on these EPEL packages. And that's why we had to bring these packages to AL 2023. Now, to do that, that is where we partnered with SUSE on getting the EPEL packages and making it compatible for AL 2023. Yes. So that was the partnership. And this is called as SPAL, or Supplementary Packages for Amazon Linux. It is a dedicated repository that has thousands of packages. Like Christine was saying, we started prioritizing these packages based on our customers' feedback. Right. Our customers provided feedback on GitHub or via support or TAMs, technical account managers. And that's how we know that these are the packages our customers are looking for. And that is what we prioritized in the initial phase.
One thing, if you don't mind, add is also that SUSE has been critical to also help identify some of the areas and packages that they see widely used, that they see as being critical, because we sometimes have different lenses. So that expertise has also been very valuable.
Yeah.
Sorry. Here.
No, I think the other part to this too is that there's like over 8,000 packages within, was it EPEL?
EPEL,
right?
Yep.
Narrowing that down to try, and I think I want to really talk about like how long it took, not even long, but like how critical the discussions were to talk about what type of packages are there, how are we going to support them after we provide them, what does security look like? All of that were things that we discussed even before we even started looking at delivering them, right? And that's why I think what makes this partnership really special is because we understand that security, we talked about that earlier, two components of customers, critical needs are lessen the complexity and security. So this was really a way that we did a lot of homework, a lot of back and forth. The prioritization of the packages were even like slipping, back and forth as time went on. We even had more. So I really have to say a big thank you to our engineering team at SUSE, and also the support from Amazon's Linux team. It just really, it was really awesome to see everybody come together. It was such a unique partnership.
Absolutely. I want to focus in on the security aspect of it, though. At a time where software supply chain security is so critical, unfortunately, we have at the folks at CISA promulgated the SBOM regulations and so forth, and whether or not we still see a lot of this coming out of the quasi-governmental CISA and MITR and NIST and so forth, but software supply chain security is a critical piece of this, and a critical part of this announcement is that SUSE is certifying the security. SUSE is standing behind these packages saying, hey, the packages you're getting from us, they don't have Shai-Hulud or one of these worms that are out here now that are just wreaking havoc with a lot of package managers out there. And that, that's not trivial.
Yeah.
That's really important.
That was a truly essential part of this, and the driver is that, when we look at our teams, we can do that. We have the expertise, but the value and the challenge of keeping up with, is this package actively maintained? Is anybody looking at it?
Yep.
Do we go fix it ourselves? Do we then end up stuck, maintaining something that we may not fully understand, but we identified a vulnerability? Like if we weren't careful, we can very easily wake up and own tons of operational challenges and potentially really disappoint customers in that expectation. So being able to share that responsibility and shift it so that we can sleep at night and our customers can, but because somebody is looking at a lot of the supply chain and not as much on a best effort basis, it's something that is core to this relationship. It's really important.
A word we've talked a lot about on these panels and in my videos these last couple of days is scale. They call Amazon a hyperscaler. It's just that, Spencer. It's the scale. It's not a dozen packages that I could keep an eye on.
Yeah.
It's 8,000, 3,000 are going in to maintain. And you know how maintaining any software, let alone open source, is, right? I found a bug in this. We got to update it. I don't want to have to go through my the last big one and find wherever it's running in my infrastructure. It is not at doing that at scale. Again, if it's not someone's job, it doesn't get done.
Well, the other piece to this is that SUSE does have the open build system, and that's where we actually harden and secure the packages, right?
Yeah.
And that is actually open to other companies that use it. Other open source Linux companies that use it, and so we're behind that, and we actually use that to deliver the packages.
Love it.
And there's another deeper layer to this. And when we talk about packages, it's not like, okay, there's one package and that's it. There's always like a ton of dependencies around those packages. So identifying those dependencies, making sure that those packages are there. So that also is a part of this entire partnership.
Right, yeah.
So there is a complexity there. And yeah.
SBOMs aren't easy.
This was definitely complex.
Because it's like the commercial and so on and so on and so on. Once you start getting into these dependencies, well, I got this from here, they got it from there, and what are they doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the one thing I would add is, the reality is all of us have challenges of keeping up with the amount of kernel CVs these days with the changes that were made. And I think when we look at what that is going to take to ensure we're staying on top of it, a lot of it is a choice of where do you invest. And
absolutely. We're running a little low on time. I want to bring it down to a call to action. I always like to have a call to action in these things. Let's, number one, Amazon Linux 2023 is available now. You don't have to wait till June to
No.
You'd be silly to wait till June to make that migration. Number one. Number two, the SPALs are available now.
Yes.
How many packages have we delivered now? There's been quite a few.
1,800.
1,800. Actually, that from end of August
Right.
to mid-November.
November, yeah.
That's how fast we've been
Work,
operating.
and
That's
we're
a
still
lot.
adding more. For my Amazon using folks, and there's a lot of them out here, how do they access this?
Yep, absolutely. So customers who are using AL 2023 can actually install and enable this SPAL repository by a simple DNF command. Just install the repository, and then you can install the packages that matter to you. You don't have to install all the 1800 packages. You can just install the packages that matter to you. Even that happens with a simple DNF command. So it's very easy. It's just 2 commands that you can use to access the repository and install the packages.
Fantastic. Do you think we'll see a time where we'll have sort of like a recommended configuration for AL 2023 with the SPALs, or it's always sort of a la carte?
I would take a stab that it's, first it's going to come down to, is it something customers want? So we maintain various AMIs that we build for different architectures, so there's a number of AMIs, Amazon Machine Images that we build with Amazon Linux. So if it is something that customers want, then yes. But the reality is that it's not terribly difficult, and for many customers, it becomes really tricky to try to guess what that set would be, and then for them to understand, and how does that change, right? If I have another update, maybe a package goes away. What does that mean, right? And so we may, but I think really for now, it's understanding how customers are actually using it, monitoring what packages, not on an individual level, but in aggregate, are really being used heavily, so we can make sure that not missing anything. We want to really make sure customers are unblocked first. Maybe we'll make that easier later, but it's not a terrible inconvenience or issue today for customers to enable it, install a package, and if they want to create an AMI of their own that already has that running, and they're done, right? So it's probably the simple way to go.
Absolutely. Well, Shri, Spencer, Christine, thank you so much for coming on here at Techstrong TV with us today. I'm sure our audience appreciates it. Great work. Great work. I mean, look, maintaining, what was it, 8,000 packages totally?
Yeah.
Maintaining 8,000 packages and having a true enterprise Linux.
Yeah.
I mean, the folks at SUSE have been doing it for over 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a trivial task, right? It takes a village.
Yeah.
And continued success with it. We'll see it. I'm sure we'll see more of it coming, and we'll be following up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. We'll be back. I think this may wrap our day 2 coverage up, but we have a full day more of Amazon coverage, of AWS reInvent coverage tomorrow, starting with our Techstrong Gang first thing in the morning. Well, first thing in the morning Vegas time. It might be a little later for you guys out there on the East Coast. But for now, this is Ilan Shimel. Thanks for staying with us today. Have a great day. You've just watched Techstrong TV.
All right, folks, very warm welcome. My name is Prithviraj, and with me is Bharat. We'll be introducing ourselves, but today we are talking about golden paths or spaghetti pipelines, the Darth Vader of platformers. It's influenced by a lot of Star Wars. I won't say that I am a Star Wars fan, but I think I've watched quite a bit. So we are going to be talking about how platform engineering has evolved in today's world, and what platform engineering has come up to, and we'll introduce a cool open source project in Cordant. Obviously, that's how I have summarized the talk for you. Again, my name is Prithviraj. I'm a CNCF ambassador and a community manager at Mirantis. My journey started off with chaos engineering, a lot of things around Litmus chaos, and now I have been doing a lot of platform engineering, K0s, Cordant, OpenSDN. Other than that, I from a community aspect, I run KCD Bangalore platform engineering meetup. So you can connect with me on my socials. Bharat, would you like to introduce yourself?
Mm-hmm. Sure, Prithvi, thanks. So I'm Bharat. Thanks, folks, for tuning in. I'm the OSPO lead at Mirantis. OSPO, for those of you who don't know, it's Open Source Program Office. So the typical role of OSPO would be to focus on the upstream contributions and contributing to the open source community. And we at Mirantis are especially focused at the Kubernetes ecosystem. So we work around technologies such as Cluster API, SvelteOS, and the Open Telemetry in Prometheus Grafana, for the observability stack and so on. Yeah, happy to be here.
All right. Thank you so much, Bharat. For the agenda, I think I have given an intro already on what we will be talking about. Usually, I don't keep a set agenda in place because, you can stop me when you want. It's obviously being recorded. So we'll try to cover as much as possible. We'll talk about a lot of platform engineering and a lot about the tooling as well, how a real IDP might look like. So we'll find out what we'll talk about. But before I start talking about, what's there, platform engineering, what's the platform engineering ecosystem looking like today, I'll just start from the developer ecosystem itself. And if you can see my screen well and clear, this is hello translated in 100 languages. There are so many more languages. There's so much more that you can translate hello to. But in the developer ecosystem, it looks something like this, the CNCF landscape. And that is what is expected from developers. Developers are expected to learn tooling. They are expected to learn different kind of tooling. Beyond writing code, developers are expected to learn container runtime, chaos engineering, networking, CI/CD, building pipelines, streaming, messaging, policies. And developers don't want to learn so much tooling. Developers want to be writing and shipping the best code. They don't want to be testing and being involved with QA, being involved with learning CNCF tooling and implementing that, running it in staging, production. But that is what the ecosystem looks like today. That is how enterprises or teams are functioning today. Developers are expected to do so much that there's a developer toil, developer experience takes a hit. And that is where the idea of, DevOps came in, the idea of, moving from the old school way of development to, having the ops side of things to make shipping easier came in. And that in itself has become tough. I mean, if you have to talk about DevOps engineering today, there's a sense of change or the sense of, shift from DevOps in itself. But before I introduce that and before I talk a lot more about cloud native technology, let's talk about how cloud was meant to be. The idea was a data center interacting with a public cloud environment. That is what customers or developers or the idea of cloud brought in. But this is the reality we have today. Multiple cloud providers, there's AWS, Azure, people are hosting their infrastructures on private cloud, edge environments, and there are so many APIs under the hood that eventually it has become a complex distributed system or a complex distributed infrastructure. And the idea of container orchestrators was to make it simpler with Docker Swarm to Mesos to Kubernetes, where the community thought that Kubernetes is that one single source of truth or a powerful scheduler, powerful container orchestrator. But this is what we have eventually reached to. Kubernetes has matured, but we can see that even if we are using Kubernetes under the hood as the orchestrator, it's Kubernetes which is being used as an orchestrator in your Azure environments or your AWS environments or your GCP environments, edge environments. But there are still multiple APIs under the hood. It's very hard to manage these multi-cloud, multi-cluster deployments. And the ideation that we had with, by bringing in platforms and Kubernetes as the common control plane was that Kubernetes will remove these complications, these dependencies, and Kubernetes will act as the single source of truth or the manager to these multi-cloud, multi-cluster environments. But where are we today? I mean, with platform engineering and the concept in itself, I believe platform engineering is not a new concept. Platform as a product is. Platform engineering has existed for as long as we have known. DevOps in itself had the idea of building platforms and ensuring that the developer experience is eased out. Developers are able to ship code faster and they are able to basically build an infrastructure out of different tooling. But platform as a product is how it changes the ecosystem is that now you're trying to ship tools that are predefined. You're using the CNCF technology, you are using AI native technology, you are hosting it on different cloud environments or your VMs or on your GPUs. So the idea is to ship a ready-made standard approach to developers where they don't have to do much. They are shipped something that they have access to. There is an interactive UI per se, or there are interactive tools that they can choose from. There's a marketplace if you want to choose your CSIs, your CNIs, your container registries, your runtimes. Everything is shipped to you as a complete total platform, which I believe a lot of it has been achieved by, say, Heroku or the other options that are out there. But as I said, platform engineering has evolved to ship platform as a product where you can use your multi-cluster, multi-cloud environments with ease. But before that, let me just go back to the topic of DevOps. What's the current state of DevOps? Is DevOps actually DevOps right now? I believe that DevOps as a concept can never die. DevOps as a concept will always exist and mature. It's similar to suggesting that, say, uh, development in itself might die and AI might take over. It's similar to saying that, Python or Go might become redundant and some new coding language can take over. I believe that DevOps in itself has evolved and platform engineering has become the subset of DevOps today. That's how I look at it. And I believe and large enterprises will still focus on the DevOps side of it, because if you have not improved your DevOps, then how can you even look at implementing platform engineering as a concept or platform engineering in your different teams? Because there are different teams, they want to have a standard approach, and if you're not following the right DevOps practices, or if you're not following the right DevOps mindset, then reaching the platform engineering maturity is impossible in my opinion. And I believe the viewers will watch this presentation on 30th. They agree that maturing your DevOps practices can help you mature your platform engineering goals in itself. And DevOps challenges are driving platform engineering. What went wrong with DevOps that platform engineering came in as a niche or as a concept? I mean, before DevOps, developers were writing code, they were unit testing, but after DevOps came in, they had to write code, they had to build their pipelines, they had to write code for their builds, and then they had to write code for monitoring matrices, and then came the unit testing side of things. And as I spoke about, developers don't want to learn about infra and new tooling. There's a slow developer onboarding, and cognitive overload and developer burnout has actually hindered developer growth, or you can say the amount of input or productivity that developers can come in with. And that is where we, considered platform engineering from a cost perspective, from a reliability perspective. There are so many outages, chaos engineering, incident management, reliability engineering, debugging, integration testing has improved so much. So, to address these critical outages, incidents, to find out what's going wrong, to ensure that your systems are consistent, and even if you are making changes, or you are adding features to your systems, because the infrastructures are so dynamic and in nature, there's a shift left uh, resiliency or development happening. You need to ensure that if your production releases are happening frequently, say in a month, you're accelerating your cloud native journey, adding tooling. You have to consider the platform engineering approach, where you're standardizing the approach and you're ensuring that you are shipping code in terms of a platform or an internal developer portal, IDP, as the world popularly knows. But there's a dark side to the realm. There's a dark side to platform engineering. Even if the idea of platform engineering is to focusing on self-service internal platforms, streamlining software delivery, platform engineering has not been, you know, subdued or performed in the right way. The platforms that we are trying to build today, They are overly complex in nature. Teams have platform engineers as personas, but they have not reached the right approach to it. And I'll cover some dark side why we, instead of building the right golden paths or the right platforms, we have, created spaghettis, if you say so, how I've defined the talk, or why is it all over the place. The first point, of course, too many stormtroopers over the complex platforms. There's lack of focus on the core needs. You have to begin by addressing the most pressing challenges faced by the developers. You have to add features iteratively rather than, adding all of the features together. There has to be a minimal viable product mindset. You have to prioritize features based on real world requirements. There has to be regular reviews, periodically assessing what's going wrong, why their platforms are having redundant features, or is there a complexity issue that you're facing with your platform building in itself. There's a lack of developer adoption. Even the most well-built platforms become ineffective because developers are hesitant. You need to have a user-centric design, build platforms with developers in mind, focusing on their usability, their it should have an intuitive interface. You need to demonstrate value, show developers how the platform reduces the cognitive overload and enhances their productivity. You need to constantly support them, offer robust documentation, have an accessible support system, ensure that the developer onboarding is easy, and developers are able to adopt it in a structured way. I believe platform engineering is missing the real goal. Many organizations jump into platforms, as I spoke about, but they don't have a purpose in place. So I believe education and training, conducting the right workshops, sessions, familiarizing them with the platforms, and incremental rollout, as you say, gradually changing the engineering practices or moving from the old school software delivery model, having the right feedback loops in place, actively solicit and act on feedback from users, which is your developers. I'll talk about platform democracy, an idea or concept I really believe in. But yeah, you need to find out the real goal. What is the real evil, if I have to say so? The idea of trying to integrate legacy architecture, organizations with legacy systems want to integrate it to modern platform practices, and that is not how it's supposed to be approached. You need to have a modular design where you need to ensure that your legacy systems are able to interact in the right way with your platforms. There has to be gradual modernization rather than immediate modernization, or just pumping in the resources or the funds and ensuring that your platforms are compatible in nature, and then you have to use your middleware right. You need to ensure that you're bridging the gap from your older tech to your modern platforms. There is a Kubernetes sprawl, as I spoke about. CNCF landscape is growing like a banyan tree. There are roots and branches that people or developers cannot access so easily. You need to standardize your tooling, have a curated list of tools that your organization or your platform needs. You need to assess the ROI, what's the return to investment on the effectiveness and the tooling that you're using. And then you have to have a consolidated effort where your developers, your stakeholders, your decision makers, your customers in itself are able to have a consolidated effort towards your platform goals. Security is important. OpenSSF has been doing a commendable job. There's your centralized platforms become threats to any sort of security issues. You need to ensure that there's a security by design principle that you are following, where it's not just about the platform's design, but you have the right RBAC controls, the right encryptions. There's regular auditing in place. And of course, you have to educate your teams in terms of security and how you can minimize the human aspect to it as well. Telekiness isn't easy. I mean, scalability and performance bottlenecks are there. You need to ensure that you're planning for scale. Load testing, again, conduct regular performance and operation testing, identify and address the bottleneck. And then, of course, dynamic scaling. You need to implement auto scaling mechanisms to handle the variable workloads effectively and efficiently. I think this is the second last point that I have. Cost optimization is missing. We often see that people have built platforms, approached software delivery in a certain way, but there's no proactive cost optimization, cloud cost, resources or resource optimization, or there are other tools. I mean, open cost, cube cost out there that you need to ensure that you are having the right resource utilization and you are able to improve your overall efficiency by and at the same time you are reducing your resources and your high operational costs. And lastly, of course, observability. Without proper monitoring matrices, logging, you cannot have a platform. I believe that you cannot identify how your platform is performing if you don't have the right observability in place. You need to define your matrices. You need to define the right SLOs, SLIs, your MTTRs, how your system is behaving, say in a steady state, or when a new tooling or dynamic scaling happens, how your systems behave. And you have to have automated alerts in place to find out the critical events, the scenarios in itself. With this, I believe I have covered some main platform challenges. But one platform challenge that I believe needs to be addressed at a higher level is platform engineering needs to be democratic. Platform engineering has evolved through multiple stages, from a rigid separation between development and operation teams to the emergence of DevOps to eventually centralized platform teams. I believe to address this, there has to be a platform group where multiple teams on different focus areas have to come together. It can be the producers or the consumers. So the idea is to make platforms democratic. You need to redefine your roles. Producers are no longer the only platform teams. They include your internal teams, your executives, your compliance folks, and then your eventual customers as well, who are eventually consuming these platforms, have to become a part of your platform group to ensure that your platforms are safer, faster, and obviously are enabling the developer self-service as the idea of a developer self-service as the eventual goal. And as I spoke about, platform engineering needs multi-cluster configurations. While you are creating your IDP, you need to ensure that you are able to manage your multi-cluster configurations, your AIML, there's an AIML workload side of it, or your platforms are moving towards an AI ops, ML ops approach. There's hybrid multi-cloud environments. We have spoken about it. Most enterprises are deploying hybrid environments. You have your edge IoT environments, which have to be highly available in nature. There are multi-tenant teams. You have to maintain isolation between different teams, and obviously there are country-specific data sovereign laws as well, which you have to comply while building your platforms. And the major challenge of building these multi-cluster platforms is that the ideal goal or ideal scenario is single application per cluster, or having multiple infra providers, ensuring that your dynamic on-demand clusters are placed in the right way. But it serves a lot of challenges. Your workloads are inconsistent. There are no right policies in place. Operational goals are not met. It becomes complex. And then there's a tooling sprawl or a Kubernetes sprawl, as I spoke about. And that is where you need the right manager or the right tool to ensure that you are able to manage your golden paths well. There's no Kubernetes sprawl. Your beachhead services are not being managed well, or your services while you're managing these multi-cluster environments. Even if you're using Kubernetes as your scheduler, you need to ensure that you are doing it right, because I have seen Kubernetes being used in IBM mainframes as well. And this is how I have envisioned the platforms of today. This is a simple example I have taken. I have worked uh, with Mirantis today on platform engineering, where back when I was at Harness, you were doing a lot of software delivery. So I believe that, you need to ensure that there's the right IDP framework in place for your smooth developer onboarding. Your security tooling, I've taken an example of Falco. It has to be in place to ensure that you're orchestrating your security, or you have the software supply chain assurance. Your CI/CD, of course, that's the foundation of your platform to ensure that you're delivering your software faster. You have the GitOps in place, getting in the pipelines in place. Then comes your resilience engineering, which is your service reliability management, your chaos engineering, error tracking, incident management, and eventually your optimizing your cost and your process, which is your cloud cost management, your software delivery, software engineering insights. That, I believe, completes the structure of your platform and builds the right foundation. And this is how I have layered it into different steps or different processes, frameworks. And I hope that, eventually folks will watch this talk or will build their platforms tomorrow, will follow the suit or follow these steps or have these different modules in their platform in itself. One last point before Bharat takes over and talks a lot about multi-cluster platform engineering and tooling. Infrastructure as code, I believe Terraform brought in the boom in terms of bringing the platform mindset. But there's a core role that infrastructure as code has played in terms of platform engineering. It has enabled platform standardization and reusability. The idea of platform engineering is obviously to build the right IDPs, and IAC helps encode these platforms as reusable or composable components. You are able to drive environmental. It allows you to have the right environment to be replicated. If it's working on your machine and you have to work, you have to ensure that you are reusing it in a different dev environment or a staging environment or a prod environment. You have to have the automation and the consistency in place, so that even if there are rollbacks or there's a disaster recovery mechanism that has to kick in, it becomes simpler. And then obviously last couple of points I'll cover quickly in the interest of time. You have to have the foundations of developer self-service or self-service portals. Your templating, the infrastructure as code templating has to be, say a catalog based, or so that you can provision it in, say, your IDP framework, say a Backstage or a Humanitech or a Port. And then obviously supporting the GitOps and DevSecOps practices. You need to ensure that they are following the right security and compliance practices. There's a vault secrets management in place. There's a workflow orchestration, say using Argo CD or Flux, and then developer experience tools and your YAMLs are in place perfectly. With this, I'll allow Bharat to take over to talk a little bit about multi-cluster platform engineering and what we have. So Bharat, you can take it from here.
All right, folks. So problems, right? We heard a lot of problems, a lot of challenges, and as we like to call it in corporates, let's not call it a problem, let's call it an opportunity. Yeah. So in terms of the challenges that we spoke about and the opportunities to fix the multi-cluster, multi-cloud problem, we have a bunch of them. The previous slide talked about IAC. That's one of the most common ones that's been currently used. But of course, IAC brings in a lot of dependencies with itself, right? So if you talk about this structural, step-by-step kind of thing that we can see how we can solve it, there's the DIY open source solution where IAC also fits into this category, right? But then, of course, you have to handle all of this on your own. It brings in a lot of operational burden and the expertise dependency on those particular tools. And then there are proprietary solutions, which are great, of course. But the biggest challenge with that is, if not today, if not tomorrow, eventually one day we're going to run into the vendor lock-in problem. We've seen this a lot happen lately, but one of the things that everybody will instantly recognize is, of course, VMware, right? With the whole Broadcom situation, people felt boxed in, locked into that particular platform, and they want to get out. So this will always almost happen. With that in mind, we want to talk about an enterprise-grade open source solution, which honestly has been the business model of many good open source companies like Red Hat and others, right? So here in the IDP solution that Prithvi was mentioning earlier, the bottommost layer remains the infrastructure. It could be your clouds, it could be your on-prem, it could be public or private clouds. And then the topmost layer is your application delivery, where your end user applications rely on, right? I want to talk about the middle layer, which we are trying to like focus on, which could be the platform orchestrator, right? So we need a mechanism to figure out, how do I provision Kubernetes clusters across clouds consistently? And then how do I also ensure that the D2 operations are going as per the plan as well? That's the layer we're going to focus on. So this is where we want to focus on this open source project called as Cordant, where we have a platform engineering solution in like, 3 segments, let's say: cluster management, state management, and then observability. So observability and FinOps, I'm just going to group them. And that's probably the most straightforward one to talk about, where observability is just having eyes and ears on what's going on with your platform, right? It could be logging, it could be metrics, it could be costs, and so on. Then the left side of the screen, the cluster management and state management, are the mirror images of day 0 and day 2 operations. While cluster management helps define your infrastructure configuration, state management helps define your services configuration. I'm going to be showing a live example soon, but essentially that's the key thing that I want to convey. Cluster management is infrastructure and state management is services. So if you look at the generations or the transition of how things have gone ahead, right from 2014, which is like early days of Kubernetes, all the way to, let's say, 2023, 24, is that there's been early adopters, and then there's OpenShift, which is a very opinionated way of Kubernetes, and of course, on the great vendor solutions. And then as we progress, we can see that there's a good community-driven solutions right now, where Kubernetes has been the fabric that is orchestrating all the major workloads. And in order to develop this, we have platforms, right? Which is Cordant. So here's where we encapsulate like sort of all the open source components that are used in Cordant. Like I said, the whole thing is driven by existing open source projects. Cluster management is taken care primarily by Cluster API and all the other cloud providers like Capo for OpenStack, Kappa for AWS, Capz for Azure, and so on, right? And then there's the K0s and Cosmotron, which is the Kubernetes distro. K0s, that's what is underneath, and the control plane manager, which is Cosmotron. And similarly, in state management or service orchestration, we have SvelteOS and Flux. And then in the observability side of things, we have a whole bunch of other, open source solutions. So this slide basically shows another layer of IDP and how we basically have it if we're doing completely DIY kind of solution, right? So in terms of observability, we have like KubeCost, Grafana, Prometheus, and all that. And then Kyverno, and then, RabbitMQ, and all these bunch of services. And if we go to the next slide, we can see how all these complexities are simplified into the 3 layers that we're talking about, where it's all encapsulated for you and delivered to you as a single platform. Catalog.cordon.io is like an analogy for us to understand this is mobile apps have Play Store and service templates has catalog. That's it. Any application that you want to deploy, for example, Argo CD, right? Which is one of the common things we use for our CD. So it's available as a service template, and all you need to do is do a Helm install and then specify which particular chart you want to deploy it. That's it. It's as simple as that. Here we have like multiple applications, right? And all of these are, tested and They have gone through like E2E tests and manual testing, and then they're uploaded onto catalog. But in case you have an application that is not intended to be public, we can still use your own application and just make sure that we specify the proper OCI path for the chart. So what I mean to say is, even if the application is not public, you can still upload it to your own catalog as a Helm chart, and then specify that during the installation. That is supported as well. I want to show a live example of how we use Accordant in order to provision a Kubernetes cluster on OpenStack. So I've chosen OpenStack to be an example for this demo, but we can simulate the same thing across multiple clouds as well. So first, let me show, let me set up a bit of context. Currently, we are on a kind cluster, which we will use as a management cluster. And this cluster will be the base in order to manage hundreds of clusters. Then we've got our cluster templates, right? As you can see, these are cluster templates, and you can see that each one exists for a particular variant of a particular cloud. And today we're going to be using the OpenStack standalone control plane template, right? And then similarly, the equivalent of this, we have service templates. So for the example that I want to show, I just used a NVIDIA GPU operator, right? So service templates can be installed onto your cluster, just like what I showed earlier, using Helm upgrade install and specifying the chart. For now on my cluster, I just had these two, and I'm going to be using this one. And then finally, let's take a look at the cluster deployment that defines this configuration, which is what I mentioned as a single YAML file to define both the infrastructure specific configuration as well as the services configuration. So your cluster deployment references the template which you want to use based on the cluster, based on the cloud. It references the credential, which I just applied before this. And then this is typical infrastructure configuration, changes from cloud to cloud. And over here, I'm using T245, which is a flavor of, which is a GPU flavored instance, right? But for the control plane, I'll be using a normal CPU only instance. And then services, I just mentioned what kind of services I want installed on this cluster. So for now, I mentioned the GPU operator, and that's it. So in the interest of time, I had already applied this cluster deployment just before the talk, and Accordant controller takes this configuration, reads the infra-specific stuff, understands the template, uses the credential, and uses the rest of the infrastructure configuration, and actually deploys a cluster on OpenStack. Once the cluster is deployed, then it would also figure out the service spec, and it would deploy the particular service on that cluster. So let's check out, so this one, I've already checked out the particular cluster. And if I do a config view, as you can see, this is the one which we have provisioned, right? And then the service configuration, just to let you know, since we chose the NVIDIA GPU operator, it has installed that, and then the operator has done whatever job it has to do, right? Which is to let the cluster know that this is a GPU enabled cluster. And how do we confirm that this is working? By describing the node, right? Let's describe the worker node. There you go. nvidia.com/GPU. And here we go. So essentially, the NVIDIA GPU operator told our Kubernetes cluster that this particular instance has a worker node, which is GPU enabled, and added this label so that the workloads can utilize this particular label. And yeah, that's it, right? So in case you want to scale this, all you would need to do is add more services onto the single YAML. So we can easily imagine putting this particular YAML file into a GitOps-enabled repository, and your platform engineers would just need to work with this YAML file, update a version, let's say, for example, or add more services like Istio in case that's a service that we're interested in. And Quadrant would do the job of picking up that configuration and coming back here and applying that on the child cluster. I think with that, just Prithvi, I'm going to pass it over to you so that you can just finish with the community stuff.
Folks who are watching this talk, you can scan this QR to access the Quadrant GitHub. Feel free to check it out. Feel free to check out the components. There are different repos, the KCM, the KSM, the COF, and other repos that give you access to everything about Quadrant. This is the main repo. And if you're on the CNCF Slack, you can join the Quadrant channel or scan this QR to join the CNCF Slack and then join the Quadrant channel to be a part of the community. Once again, thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, Brian and folks at Techstrong for helping record this. And yeah, I hope you will love this talk and join Quadrant and the Quadrant community.